This is the moment Officer Danielle Monroe comes face to face with the man who broke her heart 12 years ago.
Danielle, after all these years, I never thought I'd see you again.
Sign at the bottom, please. That'll be $350, payable within 30 days.
They threatened to destroy you if I didn't leave. Your father went to prison because of my uncle.
You vanished without a word. I thought what we had was real. I really loved you, Elijah, and you treated me like an object. Rich people like you have no heart, and I learned that in the worst way possible, unfortunately.
The past they thought was buried rushes back to the surface as dangerous family secrets emerge. Now, with her father's name to clear and a powerful enemy hunting them both, will their rekindled flame survive the truth? Before we begin this emotional journey, we'd love to know, where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city in the comments below. The morning sun beat down on Danielle Monroe as she sat in her patrol car, watching for speeders on Atlanta's busy I-85. At 28, Danielle was known throughout the precinct as the officer who never bent the rules. Not for tears, not for flirtation, not even for the police chief's son who'd tried to sweet-talk his way out of a DUI last year. Another scorcher, she muttered, adjusting the air conditioning vent. The humidity made her uniform stick to her skin, but Danielle never complained. Growing up with a father who'd been in and out of jail, and a mother who worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table, had taught her that complaining didn't solve problems. Following rules did. Her radio crackled. All units in Sector 4 be advised. Favre increased traffic due to construction on Peachtree. Danielle acknowledged the call and was about to pull back onto the highway when a sleek black Aston Martin flew past her, weaving between lanes at least 20 miles over the speed limit. "Idiot," she said, flipping on her lights and siren. The chase was brief. The luxury car pulled over promptly onto the shoulder. Danielle grabbed her ticket book and approached the vehicle with her usual caution. The tinted window slid down smoothly, revealing a handsome black man in an expensive suit. He was looking down at his phone, not even bothering to acknowledge her presence. "License and registration, please," Danielle said in her official voice. "Do you know how fast you were going?" "Look, officer, I'm running late for a meeting. Can we make this quick?" The man finally looked up, and the world seemed to stop spinning. Those eyes. She would recognize those eyes anywhere. Elijah Ward, her first love. The boy who'd kissed her behind the church choir room when they were 16 and then disappeared. Without a word, Danielle felt like someone had punched her in the stomach. Her mouth went dry and for a moment she couldn't speak. Elijah's expression changed from annoyed to shocked. "Danielle? Danielle Monroe?" She straightened her back, grateful for her sunglasses that hid the emotion in her eyes. "License and registration." "Sir?" Elijah stared at her, his mouth slightly open. "I can't believe it's you." "License and registration," she repeated, her voice firm despite the trembling in her hands. Elijah fumbled with his wallet, pulling out his driver's license. "Danielle, Mr. Ward, you were going 23 miles over the speed limit and changing lanes without signaling. That's reckless driving." He handed her the documents, and their fingers brushed briefly. Danielle pulled away as if burned. "Oh, this is unexpected," Elijah said, his voice softer now. "But can we talk, please?" Danielle ignored him, walking back to her patrol car to run his information. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. Elijah Ward, the tech millionaire whose face occasionally appeared in business magazines, the quiet, brilliant boy who had promised to love her forever and then vanished from her life without explanation. When she returned to his car, she handed him a ticket. "Sign at the bottom, please." "Danielle, please, give me 5 minutes. That'll be $350, payable within 30 days. Have a good day, Mr. Ward." She kept her voice professional, betraying none of the turmoil inside her. Elijah's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist gently. "Please, I need to explain." "Remove your hand, sir, or I'll have to charge you with assaulting an officer." He let go immediately. "I'm sorry, I never thought I'd see you again." "That was your choice, wasn't it?" The words slipped out before she could stop them. Elijah's face fell. "No, it wasn't. That's what I need to tell you." Danielle looked around, aware that they were on a busy highway. "This isn't the place." "Then where? When? I've been looking for you for years." She almost laughed. "You've been looking for me? You didn't look very hard. I've been in the same city the whole time." "Danielle, sign the ticket, Mr. Ward." Ito signed it slowly, his eyes never leaving her face. "I'm staying at the Grand Hyatt downtown. Room 1216, please just give me a chance to explain." Danielle took the ticket, her face expressionless. "Drive safely, sir." She walked back to her patrol car, her legs stiff, her back straight. Only when she was safely inside did she allow herself to breathe. Her hands shook as she put the car in drive. Elijah Ward was back in Atlanta. The boy who had broken her heart was now a man, a wealthy, successful man who claimed he'd been looking for her. She glanced in her rearview mirror and saw his car still parked on the shoulder. She could see his silhouette, watching her drive. Away, just like she had watched him drive away all those years ago. Elijah sat in his hotel room, loosening his tie. The meeting he'd been rushing to had gone poorly. He couldn't focus, couldn't think about anything except Danielle's face. Older now, harder, but still the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. How did it go? His assistant, Marcus, entered with a stack of documents. "I saw her," Elijah said, staring out the window at the Atlanta skyline. "Saw who? The Johnson Group rep? Danielle. She pulled me over for speeding." Marcus put down the documents. "Wait, the Danielle? The one you came back to Atlanta to find?" Elijah nodded. "She's a cop now, gave me a ticket without blinking." "Did you tell her why you're really here?" She wouldn't listen. Elijah stood and paced the room. "I don't blame her. I vanished without explanation. But she has to know the truth. Your uncle won't like this," Marcus warned. "He made it clear that the family expects you to—" "I don't care what my uncle expects." Elijah's voice hardened. "I've spent 12 years building my company, proving myself. I'm not that scared kid anymore. The Wards are powerful people. Elijah, your uncle still sits on the board, and I'm still CEO." Elijah stopped pacing. "I need to find out where she lives." Marcus sighed. "I'll see what I can do, but be careful. You know what your family is capable of." Elijah looked out at the city again. "That's exactly why I have to make things right." Danielle's small apartment was spotless, everything in its place. After her shift, she'd cleaned the already clean kitchen, organized her already organized closet, and still couldn't settle her mind. She pulled out the old shoebox from the back of her closet and sat on her bed. Inside were the few mementos she'd kept from her teenage years, a dried corsage from prom, her high school graduation tassel, and a worn envelope with her name written in Elijah's neat handwriting. She'd found it in her locker the day after New Year's Eve, the day after she'd seen the photos of him kissing another girl at some fancy gala. She'd been so hurt she'd almost thrown it away without reading it. But she couldn't. Danielle unfolded the letter now, though she knew every word by heart. "My dearest Danielle, I'm sorry for last night. What you saw wasn't what it seemed. I would never betray you. You're the only one I've ever loved, the only one I'll ever love. Meet me at our spot behind the church tonight at 8. I'll explain everything. Forever yours, Elijah." She'd never gone to meet him. And the next day she heard he'd left town with his family. The doorbell rang, jolting her from her memories. She quickly put the letter back in the box and went to answer. Through the peephole she saw her mother, Yvonne, holding a casserole dish. "Hey, baby," Yvonne said, sweeping in and heading straight for the kitchen. At 50, Yvonne Monroe still had the energy of a woman half her age, despite the grey streaks in her dark hair. "I brought your favorite, mac and cheese with the crispy top." "Thanks, Mom, but I'm not really hungry." Yvonne turned, scrutinizing her daughter's face. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." Danielle hesitated. "I pulled over Elijah Ward today." The casserole dish clattered onto the counter. "Elijah Ward, that boy who broke your heart?" "He didn't exactly break my heart, Mom." "Oh? Then why did you cry for weeks? Why did you rip up all his pictures? Why did you—" "Mom, please." Danielle rubbed her temples. "It was a long time ago. Not long enough, apparently. Look at your face." Yvonne crossed her arms. "What did he want?" "He said he wants to explain why he left." "After 12 years. Please, He probably saw your uniform and figured a police officer would make a good trophy. Wife, now that he's some big shot. I didn't say I was going to listen to him. Good. Yvonne busied herself setting the table. That family was trouble from the start, acting like they were better than everyone else. His parents weren't like that, Danielle said quietly. Just his uncle. Well, that uncle was the one pulling the strings. Yvonne stopped suddenly. Did he mention your father? Danielle frowned. No. Why would he? Yvonne shook her head. No reason. Let's eat before this gets cold. But Danielle noticed how her mother's hands trembled slightly as she served the food. The next morning, Danielle was back on patrol, trying to put thoughts of Elijah out of her mind. She'd barely slept, and the few hours she did get were filled with dreams of him. His smile, his voice, the way he used to look at her like she was the only girl in the world. Her radio crackled. Monroe, we've got a 1050 on Ponce de Leon. Respond. A traffic accident. Good. She needed the distraction. When she arrived at the scene, she found a fender bender between a taxi and a delivery truck. No injuries, just paperwork. As she directed, traffic around the vehicles. A black Aston Martin pulled up nearby. Elijah stepped out, watching her from a distance. Danielle pretended not to notice, focusing on her job, but her heart was racing. After the accident was cleared and the drivers sent on their way, Elijah approached her. This is harassment, Mr. Wood, she said before he could speak. I just want to talk, Danielle, please. I'm on duty. When do you get off? She sighed. Why are you doing this? It's been 12 years. 12 years, 4 months and 16 days, he said quietly. Not that I've been counting. Despite herself, Danielle felt a flutter in her chest. I get off at 6. Can I pick you up at the station? No, I'll meet you. She couldn't risk her colleagues seeing her with him. There's a park on Oakdale Road, the one with the gazebo. Their old spot. The place where he'd first kissed her. Elijah nodded, understanding. I'll be there at 6:30. As he walked back to his car, Danielle wondered if she was making a mistake. The smart thing would be to leave the past buried, but the questions that had haunted her for 12 years demanded answers. At exactly 6:30, Danielle pulled into the parking lot of Oakdale Park. She'd changed out of her uniform into jeans and a simple blue blouse, her hair loose around her shoulders. Elijah was already there, sitting on a bench near the gazebo. He stood when he saw her, and for a moment she saw the boy he had been, tall, lean, with eyes that seemed to see into her soul. You came, he said, relief evident in his voice. I want answers, Elijah. That's all. He nodded. Let's walk. They strolled in silence for a few minutes, the evening air warm around them. Children played on the swings nearby, their laughter floating across the park. I never wanted to leave you, Elijah finally said. My family forced me. Forced you? You were 16, not 6. My Uncle Richard threatened to cut off my college fund to disown me, but that wasn't what made me go. He stopped walking, turning to face her. He threatened you and your mother. Danielle stared at him. What? He said he'd make sure your mother lost her jobs, that you'd be evicted from your apartment. He said he'd ruin your lives. That's ridiculous. Your uncle didn't have that kind of power. He did, Danielle. The Ward family owned half the businesses in town, including the hospital where your mother worked and the property management company that ran your apartment complex. Danielle shook her head. So you just left, without telling me? I tried to tell you. I wrote you that letter, asked you to meet me, after I saw you kissing that girl at the New Year's Eve gala. Elijah's eyes widened. Is that what you think happened? Danielle, that kiss was staged. My family set the whole thing up. They made sure you saw those photos. What are you talking about? They paid that girl, Sophia Winters, to kiss me when the photographers were watching. Then they made sure the photos were sent to you. Danielle felt dizzy. Why would they go to all that trouble? Because they knew I was planning to run away with you. My uncle had my phone tapped. He heard us making plans. Elijah ran a hand through his hair. When you didn't show up at the church that night, I thought you believed the photos, that you didn't want me anymore. My family moved us to Boston the next day. Danielle struggled to process this information. But you could have contacted me later, when you were older, independent. I tried. I called your old number, but it was disconnected. I went to your old apartment when I was in college, but you'd moved. I even hired a private investigator a few years ago, but you'd changed your name. What? No, I didn't. Not your first name, your last name. The PI found a Danielle Taylor who matched your description. Danielle frowned. Taylor is my mother's maiden name. I used it for a year when I first joined the academy, but only on some paperwork. I never legally changed it. That's why I couldn't find you. Elijah stepped closer. Danielle, I never stopped looking for you. I never stopped loving you. Her heart pounded in her chest. It's been 12 years, Elijah. We're different people now. Are we? The way I feel when I look at you, it hasn't changed. Before she could respond, her police radio crackled. All available units, we have a 1031 at 1425 Pinewood Drive. Possible break-in in progress. Danielle grabbed her radio. That's my mother's address. She turned to run to her car, but Elijah caught her arm. Let me come with you. This is police business. Danielle, please, I don't think this is a coincidence. She hesitated, then nodded. Follow me in your car. As they raced to her mother's house, Danielle's mind whirled with questions. Could Elijah be right? Could his family still be trying to keep them apart after all these years? And if they were, what else might they be capable of? Yvonne Monroe stood on her front porch, trembling as she spoke to a police officer. When she saw Danielle's car pull up, followed by Elijah's Aston Martin, her face paled. Mom! Danielle rushed to her mother's side. Are you okay? What happened? Someone broke in while I was at the grocery store, Yvonne said, her eyes fixed on Elijah as he approached. They didn't take anything valuable, just went through my papers, my photos. The officer with Yvonne looked at Danielle. You know the victim, Officer Monroe. She's my mother, Danielle explained. I got the call on my radio. And him? The officer nodded toward Elijah. He's... Danielle hesitated. An old friend, Elijah supplied, extending his hand to the officer. Elijah Ward. The officer's eyebrows rose slightly at the name. Mr. Ward, I didn't realize you were back in Atlanta. Just for business, Elijah said smoothly. Yvonne's eyes narrowed. Business? Is that what you call it? Mom, please, Danielle murmured. To the officer, she asked, Can I see inside? The officer nodded. We've dusted for prints, but the perp wore gloves. Very professional job. Danielle entered her mother's house, noting the precise way drawers had been opened and closed, the careful way papers had been rifled through. This wasn't a random break-in. The intruder had been looking for something specific. Elijah followed her inside, his expression grim. This is his work, he said quietly. Your uncle? Danielle asked, keeping her voice low. Elijah nodded. It's a warning. He knows I've found you. How would he know that? He has people watching me. He always has. Elijah glanced around. What were they looking for? I don't know. Danielle walked to her mother's bedroom where the dresser drawers had been searched. A photo album lay open on the bed. Old pictures of Danielle as a teenager. One photo was missing. Danielle could see the empty space in the album. What was here? She asked her mother, who had followed them. Yvonne looked away. Nothing important. Mom, someone broke in and took only one photo. What was it? Yvonne sighed. It was a picture of your father, with Richard Ward. Danielle stared at her mother. Why would there be a picture of Dad with Elijah's uncle? Because they used to be business partners, Elijah said quietly. Before your father went to prison. The room seemed to spin around Danielle. What are you talking about? My father went to jail for armed robbery. That's what everyone was told, Elijah said, but it wasn't the truth. Yvonne sat heavily on the edge of the bed. I never wanted you to know, Danielle. Your father wasn't perfect, but he wasn't a thief. He took the fall for Richard Ward. Took the fall? For what? Embezzlement, Elijah said. My uncle stole millions from their company, framed your father, and then used his influence to make sure James Monroe went to prison. Danielle shook her head. That's impossible. Why would Dad agree to take the blame? To protect you and your mother, Elijah said. My uncle threatened to implicate your mother as well unless your father confessed. Your mother would have gone to jail too. Danielle turned to her mother. Is this true? Tears welled in Yvonne's eyes. Your father wanted to fight it, to expose Richard. But we had no money for good lawyers and you were only 10 years old. I couldn't bear the thought of you being alone in foster care. So Dad went to prison to protect us, Danielle whispered. And you never told me. I wanted to protect you from the truth, Yvonne said. And when you started dating Elijah, I was terrified. I knew Richard would never allow his nephew to be with the daughter of the man he'd framed. That's why he separated us, Elijah said, his voice thick with emotion. Not just because you weren't our kind of people, as he put it, but because he was afraid we'd discover the truth about what he did to your father. Danielle felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. Everything she'd believed about her father, about why Elijah had left, it was all built on lies. Her police radio crackled again, breaking the heavy silence. Officer Monroe, please respond. She lifted the radio. Monroe here. We've got another situation at your location. A black sedan has been circling the block, registered to Ward Enterprises. Elijah's face hardened. He's watching us right now. Danielle moved to the window, scanning the street. A black Lincoln town car was parked across the street, its engine running. I need to talk to him, Elijah said, heading for the door. Elijah, wait. Danielle grabbed his arm. If what you're saying is true, your uncle is dangerous. I'm not that scared boy anymore, Danielle. I built my own company, my own fortune. He can't control me now. He looked into her eyes. And I won't let him hurt you again. Before she could stop him, Elijah was out the door, striding purposefully toward the black car. Danielle rushed after him, her hand instinctively going to where her service weapon would be if she were in uniform. The rear window of the Lincoln rolled down, revealing the stern face of an older man with silver hair and cold eyes. Richard Ward, nephew. Richard called out, his voice smooth and controlled. I see you've been reconnecting with old friends. This ends now, Uncle, Elijah said, his voice carrying across the lawn. I know what you did to James Monroe. I know why you separated me from Danielle. Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. You always were a sentimental boy. It's your greatest weakness. His gaze shifted to Danielle. Officer Monroe, following in your father's footsteps, I see, though he ended up on the wrong side of the law. Because of you, Danielle said, stepping forward. Be careful making accusations without proof, my dear. I'll find proof, Elijah said. I have resources now, Uncle. I'll clear James Monroe's name and I'll make sure everyone knows what you did. Richard's smile faded. You're making a mistake, Elijah. The family won't stand for this. I don't care about the family. I care about making things right. Richard's eyes hardened. You have until tomorrow to reconsider. Come to the house at noon, alone. The window rolled up, and the car pulled away from the curb. Elijah turned to Danielle, his face grim. He's not going to stop. What are you going to do? Whatever it takes to expose the truth and make things right. He took her hands in his. But I need to know. Do you believe me? About everything? Danielle looked into his eyes, the same eyes that had captivated her 12 years ago. She thought of all the questions that had haunted her, all the pain she'd carried. I want to, she whispered. But it's a lot to process. My whole life. Everything I thought I knew about my father, about why you left. It's all different now. I understand. He squeezed her hands gently. Take all the time you need, but please be careful. My uncle is a dangerous man. As he spoke, Danielle's radio crackled once more. All units be advised, we have reports of shots fired at Oakdale Park, near the gazebo. Danielle froze. The park where she and Elijah had just been talking, where they'd been seen together. This isn't a coincidence, she said quietly. No, Elijah agreed. It's a message. My uncle is showing us what he's capable of. Danielle looked, back at her mother's house where Yvonne stood on the porch, watching them with worried eyes. I need to go check out that call, Danielle said. But we're not finished talking about this. Elijah nodded. I'll wait for you at the hotel, room 1216, as... Danielle hurried to her car. She felt as though her entire world had been turned upside down. The father she'd resented for abandoning them had actually sacrificed himself to protect them. The boy she'd believed had betrayed her had been trying to protect her all along. And now, 12 years later, they were both caught in a web of secrets and lies that threatened to destroy them all over again. But this time, Danielle wasn't a heartbroken teenager. She was a police officer, trained to uncover the truth and pursue justice. And Elijah wasn't a scared boy controlled by his family. He was a powerful man in his own right, determined to right the wrongs of the past. Together, perhaps they could finally break free from the shadows that had kept them apart for so long. But first, they had to survive Richard Ward's wrath. Danielle arrived at Oakdale Park to find it swarming with police officers. Yellow crime scene tape fluttered in the evening breeze around the gazebo, where she and Elijah had sat just hours earlier. "What happened?" she asked Officer Rodriguez, who was taking statements from witnesses. "Drive-by shooting. Black Lincoln. No plates. 3 shots fired into the gazebo. No casualties, thank God." Rodriguez looked at her curiously. "Weren't you off duty?" "I heard the call and was nearby," Danielle said, hoping he wouldn't ask more questions. "Any shell casings?" "Nope. Professional job." Rodriguez nodded toward the gazebo. "The bullets hit right where people usually sit." Danielle felt cold despite the warm night. Those bullets had been meant as a warning for her and Elijah. "I'll take some witness statements," she offered, needing to appear normal despite her racing heart. As she interviewed parkgoers, her mind kept returning to everything Elijah had told her. Could it really be true? Had her father been innocent all these years? Had Richard Ward really framed him and then torn her and Elijah apart to hide his crimes? When she finished her shift, Danielle sat in her car staring at her phone. She should go home, get some sleep, process everything that had happened. But there was only one place she wanted to be. She dialed her mother. "Are you okay, Mom?" she asked when Yvonne picked up. "I'm fine, baby. The officers are still here. They say they'll keep a patrol car outside all night." "Good." Danielle hesitated. "Mom, I need to know everything about Dad and Richard Ward. The whole truth." Yvonne sighed heavily. "Not over the phone, Danielle. These people have ears everywhere." "I'm going to see Elijah," Danielle admitted. "Be careful, baby. These Wards are dangerous people." "Not Elijah," Danielle said firmly. "He's trying to make things right." "I hope you're right." Yvonne paused. "Your father always said Elijah was different from the rest of them. That's why he didn't try to stop you two from seeing each other, even though he knew it could cause trouble." Danielle blinked back sudden tears. "I'll talk to you tomorrow, Mom. Lock all your doors." "I will, and Danielle, your father would be proud of you, no matter what happens." The Grand Hyatt's lobby was all gleaming marble and soft lighting. Danielle felt out of place in her jeans and blouse as she approached the front desk. "I'm here to see Elijah Ward," she said, half expecting to be turned away. The concierge smiled. "Yes, Ms. Monroe. Mr. Ward said you might be coming. Suite 1216, top floor." Of course he'd left her name. Danielle took the elevator up, her stomach fluttering with a mix of nervousness and something else, something she hadn't felt in years. Elijah opened the door before she could knock. He'd changed into a casual button-down shirt and jeans, looking more like the boy she remembered. "You came," he said, relief evident in his voice. "I have questions," Danielle said, stepping into the suite. It was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Atlanta skyline. "And I have answers." Elijah gestured to the sitting area. "Would you like something to drink? Water? Wine?" "Water is fine." Danielle perched on the edge of a plush sofa, watching as Elijah poured 2 glasses of water from a crystal decanter. "There was a shooting at the park," she said, as he handed her a glass. Elijah's face darkened. "Anyone hurt?" "No, it was a warning. My uncle doesn't make idle threats." Elijah sat across from her. "He called while you were gone, told me to end things with you and return to Boston, or there would be unfortunate consequences." "And what did you say?" "I told him I'm not going anywhere." Elijah leaned forward. "Danielle, I have evidence against him. Documents that prove he framed your father." Danielle almost dropped her glass. "What? How?" When I started my own company 5 years ago, I hired a team to investigate my family's business practices. I wanted to make sure I wasn't associated with anything illegal. Elijah ran a hand through his hair. They found accounting discrepancies going back to when my uncle and your father were partners. Money transfers to offshore accounts in Richard's name, made to look like your father authorized them. Why didn't you go to the police? The statute of limitations had expired on the financial crimes, and Richard still had too much influence. But now, Elijah's eyes met hers. Now I have a reason to bring it all to light. Me? Danielle shook her head. Elijah, this is much bigger than us. It's always been about us, Danielle. My uncle separated us because he was afraid we'd discover the truth together. He knew your father had told you stories about his business. Days. He was afraid you might remember something, make connections. Danielle frowned. Dad never talked about his business with me. Are you sure? Think back. Were there ever conversations, maybe about Uncle Richard, that seemed odd? Danielle closed her eyes, trying to remember. Her father had been arrested when she was 10, released when she was 15. Those few months before he disappeared again, before he supposedly abandoned them, were hazy in her memory. There was one time, she said slowly, opening her eyes. Dad came home upset from a meeting. I heard him tell Mum that Richard is going to ruin everything. I thought he meant the church fundraiser they were both working on. Elijah nodded. That was right before the embezzlement was discovered. Your father must have realized what my uncle was doing. But why would Dad take the blame? Why not fight it? Because Richard threatened you and your mother. Elijah's voice was gentle. He said he'd make sure your mother was implicated too, that you'd be put in foster care. Tears stung Danielle's eyes. So Dad went to prison to protect us? Yes. And when he got out, Richard wasn't finished with him. What do you mean? My uncle was afraid your father would eventually talk, expose him. So he threatened him again, this time with you. Danielle stared at him. Me? You were dating me by then. Richard told your father that if he didn't leave town, never contact you or your mother again, he'd make sure something happened to you. Elijah's voice cracked. Your father left to protect you, Danielle, not because he didn't love you. Danielle stood abruptly, walking to the window. Tears streamed down her face as 12 years of anger and hurt toward her father suddenly transformed into grief. All this time, she whispered, I thought he just didn't care enough to stay. Elijah came to stand beside her, not touching her but close enough that she could feel his warmth. Your father was a good man. He sacrificed everything for you. Danielle turned to him, wiping her eyes. How do you know all this? I hired investigators to find your father after I discovered what my uncle had done. They tracked him to Seattle last year. He was living under another name, working as a janitor. Elijah paused. He had cancer, Danielle. He knew he was dying, so he finally told the truth about everything. My father is dead. Danielle felt her knees weaken. Elijah caught her arm, steadying her. I'm so sorry. He died 6 months ago. He made me promise to find you, to tell you the truth. And that's why you came back to Atlanta, Danielle said, understanding dawning. Not for business. The business was just a cover. I came for you, Danielle, to fulfill my promise to your father, and to finally tell you why I disappeared all those years ago. Danielle looked into his eyes and saw nothing but sincerity. The boy who had vanished from her life had become a man determined to right the wrongs of the past. I need to tell my mother, she said. She needs to know about Dad. Of course, Elijah hesitated. But it might not be safe for you to go home tonight. My uncle's men will be watching your apartment, your mother's house. I'm a police officer, Elijah. I can take care of myself. I know you can. He smiled slightly. You always were the strongest person I knew, but please be careful. Stay somewhere unexpected tonight. A friend's place, maybe. Danielle nodded. I'll call my partner, Lisa. I can stay with her. Good. Elijah walked her to the door. I'm meeting with my lawyers tomorrow morning. Then I'm going to see my uncle at noon, as he requested. That sounds dangerous. It is. But I have to try to reason with him one last time before I go public with everything. Danielle frowned. Don't go alone. I have to. If I bring anyone else, he'll see it as a threat. Then I'll follow you. Stay out of sight. Elijah shook his head. No, Danielle, I won't put you at risk. This involves my father, Elijah, my family. I deserve to be there. They stared at each other for a long moment, both stubborn, both determined. Finally, Elijah sighed. Fine, but you stay in the car out of sight. Richard's estate has security cameras everywhere. Deal. Danielle turned to go, then paused. Elijah, thank you for never giving up on finding me. He reached out, gently touching her cheek. Some loves are worth waiting for. Danielle felt a warmth spread through her at his touch. Despite everything, the years apart, the painful revelations, the danger they were in, being with Elijah felt right. It felt like coming home. She leaned forward and brushed her lips against his, a whisper of a kiss that held the promise of, "More, be careful," she whispered. "I just found you again. I don't want to lose you." Elijah's eyes were bright with emotion. "You won't. Not ever again." As Danielle left the hotel, she felt lighter than she had in years. The truth was painful, but it was also freeing. Her father hadn't abandoned them. He had sacrificed himself for them. Elijah hadn't betrayed her. He had been torn from her by forces beyond his control. And now, 12 years later, they had a chance to right the wrongs of the past. Together. Lisa. Carter's apartment was small but cozy, with mismatched furniture and plants everywhere. As Danielle's partner on patrol for the last 3 years, Lisa had become her closest friend. "Let me get this straight," Lisa said, handing Danielle a cup of tea. "Your teenage boyfriend who disappeared 12 years ago is now a tech millionaire. Who's back in town to expose his evil uncle who framed your father for embezzlement?" "That about sums it up," Danielle said, too exhausted to elaborate. "Girl, that is some soap opera stuff right there." Lisa sat on the couch beside her. "And you believe him?" "I do." Danielle sipped her tea. "It explains so much. Why Dad went to prison, why he left again after he got out, why Elijah disappeared. And now Elijah's uncle is threatening you both? The break-in at Mum's house, the shooting at the park, those weren't coincidences." Lisa's expression grew serious. "You should report this, Danielle. Get the department involved." "With what evidence?" "Right now, it's just Elijah's word against his uncle's. And Richard Ward is one of the most powerful men in Atlanta. So what's your plan?" "Elijah is meeting with his uncle tomorrow. I'm going to be nearby just in case." Lisa shook her head. "This is crazy dangerous, Dee. These people don't play by the rules." "Neither do I when it comes to my family." Danielle set down her cup. "My father spent 8 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. Then he lived in exile, alone, dying of cancer. He deserves justice. And Elijah? What does he deserve?" Danielle thought of their brief kiss, the feelings that had awakened inside her. "A chance, we both do." The next morning, Danielle woke early and called her mother. Telling Yvonne about her father's death was one of the hardest things she'd ever done. "I knew," Yvonne said, her voice thick with tears. "Somehow I knew he was gone. I felt it. He never stopped loving us, Mom. Everything he did was to protect us. That sounds like James, always putting everyone else first." Yvonne took a shaky breath. "What are you going to do about Richard Ward?" "Elijah has evidence. He's meeting with his uncle today to try to resolve things peacefully. There's no peaceful resolution with men like Richard Ward, baby. Be careful." After reassuring, her mother, Danielle, called in sick to work. She couldn't risk being assigned to a call across town when Elijah needed her. At 11:30, she parked her personal car, an aging Honda Civic, a block away from the imposing iron gates of the Ward estate. The mansion beyond was a sprawling, antebellum-style home with white columns and manicured gardens. Elijah's Aston Martin pulled up to the gates at exactly noon. The gates swung open, and he drove through. Danielle waited 5 minutes, then quietly made her way along the stone wall surrounding the property. There was a gap in the hedge she remembered from her teenage years, when she and Elijah would sneak onto the grounds to be alone. It was still, there barely big enough for her to squeeze through. The estate was massive, but Danielle knew exactly where Richard Ward would meet his nephew, in the conservatory at the back of the house, where he conducted all his important business. She crept along the edge of the garden, staying hidden behind sculpted bushes and ornamental trees. When she reached the conservatory, she pressed herself against the wall beside a partially open window. Inside, she could hear voices, Elijah's calm tones contrasting with his uncle's sharper ones. "You're making a grave mistake, Elijah," Richard was saying. "The family has supported you, groomed you to take over the business, and this is how you repay us, by dredging up ancient history? Framing an innocent man for your crimes isn't ancient history, Uncle. It's a felony. Alleged crimes. You have no proof that would stand up in court. I have bank records, Uncle. Transfers to your Cayman accounts that you forged James Monroe's signature on. I have witnesses who saw you threatening him." There was a long silence, then the sound of ice clinking in a glass. "What do you want, Elijah?" "Money. More shares in the company." "Name your price." "I want justice for James Monroe." "I want his name cleared, and I want you to leave his family alone, especially Danielle." Richard laughed coldly. "Ah, so that's what this is really about. The Monroe girl. You're still carrying a torch for her after all these years. Pathetic. I love her, Uncle. I always have." "Love." Richard spat the word like it tasted bad. "Love is for weak men, Elijah. Your father understood that. Why do you think he let me separate you from that girl? My father didn't know what you did to James Monroe. But he does now. I told him everything last month." "You what?" For the first time, Richard's voice betrayed shock. "He's flying in from London tonight. The family board meets tomorrow. We're going to vote you out, Uncle. And then we're going to the authorities with everything we have." "You ungrateful little—" Richard's voice cut off abruptly. When he spoke again, his tone was controlled, almost pleasant. "Perhaps I've underestimated you, nephew. You've grown into quite the strategist. I learned from the best," Elijah said dryly. "Indeed. Well, I can see we have much to discuss with the family. Why don't we continue this conversation over dinner tonight? Your father will be here, and we can address these allegations." "This isn't a negotiation, Uncle. It's an ultimatum. Either you step down voluntarily, or we expose everything." "I understand. Dinner, 7 o'clock. Your father will want to see you." Danielle heard footsteps, then a door opening. "Oh, and Elijah." Richard's voice was silky smooth. "Do bring Officer Monroe with you. I think it's time we cleared the air, don't you?" Danielle froze. How did he know she was there? "Danielle isn't involved in this," Elijah said, his voice tight. "On the contrary, she's at the heart of it, and I believe she's very nearby right now. Aren't you, Officer Monroe?" Danielle's heart pounded as she heard footsteps approaching the window. She ducked down, but it was too late. A security guard rounded the corner, his hand on his holster. "Ms. Monroe," he said, "Mr. Ward would like you to join them." Trapped, Danielle straightened and nodded. The guard escorted her to the conservatory door. Inside, Elijah stood rigid with tension, while Richard Ward lounged in a leather armchair, a tumbler of whiskey in his hand. He was in his 60s, silver-haired and distinguished, with the same deep brown eyes as Elijah, though his held none of the warmth. "Officer Monroe," Richard said, smiling coldly, "how good of you to join us, though I must say trespassing is beneath an officer of the law." "Uncle," Elijah warned, moving to stand beside Danielle. "It's fine," Danielle said, keeping her voice steady. "Mr. Ward, I know what you did to my father." "Your father was a thief who got what he deserved," Richard replied, his smile never wavering. "My father was innocent. You framed him, threatened him, drove him away from his family." Danielle's voice shook with anger. "And then you did the same to your own nephew. Such drama." Richard sighed, setting down his glass. "Your father made his choices, my dear, just as Elijah has made his." He turned to his nephew. "Tonight, 7 o'clock, both of you. We'll settle this once and for all." "We'll be here," Elijah said, taking Danielle's hand. "And this ends today, Uncle, one way or another." As they turned to leave, Richard called after them, "Oh, and Elijah, do give my regards to James Monroe. He always did make such noble sacrifices." Danielle froze, turning back. "My father is dead." Richard's smile widened. "Is he now? How convenient for someone who wishes to remain hidden." "What are you saying?" Elijah demanded. "I'm saying, dear nephew, that perhaps your investigators weren't as thorough as you thought. 7 o'clock. Don't be late. In the car, Danielle couldn't stop shaking. He's lying, right? About my father. Elijah gripped the steering wheel tightly. I don't know, the investigators found death records, a grave in Seattle, but with my uncle's resources... He could have faked it, Danielle whispered. But why? Why would my father fake his own death? To protect you, maybe, if he thought Richard was still a threat. Danielle stared out the window as they drove away from the Ward estate. Could her father really be alive? After all these years of thinking he'd abandoned them, then learning he'd sacrificed himself for them, could he now be somewhere out there, hiding? We need to tell my mother, she said finally. Are you sure that's wise? If your father is alive, and in hiding, telling your mother might put them both at risk. She deserves to know, Elijah. She's mourned him twice now. Once when he went to prison, once when he disappeared. I won't let her mourn him a third time if he's actually alive. Elijah nodded. You're right, but we need to be careful. My uncle is playing games with us. What do you think he's planning for tonight? I don't know, but he seemed too comfortable, too confident. Elijah frowned. He's setting a trap. Then we don't walk into it, Danielle said. We find my father first. How? If he's alive, he could be anywhere. Danielle thought for a moment. The investigators you hired, did they say where in Seattle he lived? Where he worked? Seattle General Hospital. He was a janitor there for 5 years before his supposed death. Then we start there. Call your investigators. Get them to recheck everything. The death certificate, the hospital records, the grave. Elijah pulled over and took out his phone. I'll call Marcus, he coordinated the investigation. While Elijah made the call, Danielle stared out at the Atlanta streets, her mind racing. Could her father really be alive? And if so, why had he stayed away so long even after Richard's threats could no longer hurt him or his family? Marcus is on it, Elijah said, ending the call. He's going to check everything again, go back to Seattle if necessary. How long? Will that take? Too long. We need answers before tonight. Elijah started the car again. We need to talk to your mother. She might know something she hasn't told you. Yvonne Monroe was waiting for them on her front porch, a shotgun across her lap. The break-in had clearly put her on high alert. Mom! Danielle hurried up the steps. What are you doing? Protecting myself, Yvonne said, eyeing Elijah warily, as he approached. The Wards have already broken in once. They won't catch me unprepared again. Mrs. Monroe, Elijah said respectfully, we need to talk to you about something important. Yvonne studied him for a long moment. You look like your father. He was a good man, not like that snake of a brother of his. Thank you, Elijah said. I'm trying to make things right. Yvonne nodded, then stood up, still holding the shotgun. Come inside, it's not safe out here. In the living room, Danielle sat beside her mother on the sofa, while Elijah took a chair across from them. Mom, Danielle began gently. We just met with Richard Ward. He said something about Dad. Yvonne's face remained impassive. What about James? He implied that Dad might still be alive. Yvonne's hands tightened on the shotgun. Richard Ward is a liar. He always has been. Mom, please, if you know something, you need to tell us. We're meeting with Richard tonight. He's setting a trap, and we need to know what we're walking into. Yvonne looked down at her hands, then slowly set the shotgun aside. Your father contacted me 6 months ago, she said quietly. Danielle gasped. What? Why didn't you tell me? He asked me not to. He said it was safer if you didn't know. Safer. Mom, I'm a police officer. Exactly. Yvonne looked up, her eyes filled with tears. He didn't want you trying to investigate, putting yourself at risk. Richard Ward still has friends in the department, people who owe him favors. Where is Dad now? Danielle asked, her voice trembling. I don't know exactly. He calls me every few weeks from different numbers. The last time was 3 days ago. He said he was close by, watching over us. Elijah leaned forward. Mrs. Monroe, this is important. Did James mention anything about evidence against Richard? Documents, recordings, anything that could prove what Richard did? Yvonne hesitated, then stood and went to a cabinet in the corner of the room. She unlocked it with a key she wore around her neck and pulled out a small worn envelope. He gave me this the last time I saw him in person about 2 months ago. Said if anything happened to him, I should give it to Danielle. She handed the envelope to Danielle, who opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a safety deposit box key and a note with an address and box number at Atlanta First National Bank. He said the proof was in there, Yvonne explained. Proof that Richard framed him, threatened him, forced him to leave us. Danielle stared at the key in her palm. We need to get to this bank. It closes at 5, Yvonne said. You have time. Elijah checked his watch. Barely. We should go now. As they stood to leave, Yvonne caught Danielle's arm. Baby, be careful. Richard Ward isn't just dangerous because he has money and power. He's dangerous because he has nothing to lose. Men like that will do anything. Danielle hugged her mother tightly. I'll be careful. And Mom? I'm going to find Dad, I promise. Atlanta First National Bank was a towering glass structure downtown. Danielle and Elijah hurried inside, aware that time was running short. The bank manager, a nervous man named Wilkins, escorted them to the safety deposit vault after Danielle showed her police badge and the key. This box hasn't been accessed in over 2 years, Wilkins told them, as he used his master key along with Danielle's to open the small metal box. Inside was a USB drive, a manila envelope, and a handwritten letter addressed to Danielle. With shaking hands, she opened the letter. My dearest daughter, if you're reading this, then the truth has finally found its way to you. I'm sorry for all the years of silence, for letting you believe I abandoned you and your mother. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I would do it again to keep you safe. Richard Ward is a dangerous man. The evidence in this box proves what he did, the embezzlement, the threats, everything. But be careful how you use it. Richard has allies everywhere, including in the police force and the district attorney's office. I don't know if I'll ever be able to come home, to hold you and your mother again. But know that not a day has passed that I haven't thought of you, loved you, been proud of the woman you've become. Trust Elijah. He found me when no one else could, promised to protect you when I couldn't. He's a good man, Danielle. The kind, herv man I always hoped you would find. All my love. Dad. Tears streamed down Danielle's face as she finished reading. Elijah put his arm around her shoulders, steadying her. He knew, she whispered. He knew you would find me. Your father is a remarkable man, Elijah said softly. When I found him in Seattle, he was already sick, but all he cared about was making sure you knew the truth before he died. But he didn't die, Danielle said, wiping her eyes. He's still out there, and Richard knows it. Which means tonight's dinner is definitely a trap. Elijah picked up the USB drive and the manila envelope. We need to see what's on these before we go. The manila envelope contained bank statements, photocopies of checks with forged signatures, and photographs of Richard Ward meeting with known criminals. This is it, Elijah said, flipping through the documents. This is enough to prove Richard framed your father. They took the USB drive to a computer in the bank's business center. It contained audio recordings, conversations between Richard and his associates discussing the frame-up, the threats against Yvonne and Danielle, and plans to force James Monroe to leave town. He recorded everything, Danielle said, amazed. Dad was building a case against Richard all these years, but he couldn't use it without putting you and your mother at risk. Elijah copied the files to his phone. Now we have leverage. We don't just have leverage, Danielle said, a steely determination in her voice. We have enough to arrest Richard Ward. Elijah looked at her. You're going to arrest him tonight? No, Danielle said. We're going to make him think we're walking into his trap, but really we're setting our own. As the sun began to set, Danielle and Elijah made their preparations. They secured the evidence in multiple locations, copies sent to Elijah's lawyers, to Lisa, even to a reporter Danielle trusted, at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. If anything happens to us, Danielle told Lisa over the phone, release everything. Make sure everyone knows what Richard Ward did. This is insane, Lisa replied. You should have backup, D, official backup. We can't risk it. Richard has too many connections in the department. Then at least let me be nearby. No, stay with my mother, keep her safe. Danielle paused. "And Lisa. If we don't come back, help her find my father. He's out there somewhere." After the call, Danielle changed into a simple black dress she'd borrowed from Lisa. Elijah wore a tailored suit, looking every inch the successful businessman. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, as they prepared to leave for the Ward estate. "No," Danielle admitted. "But we don't have a choice. Richard is expecting us, and if we don't show up, he might send his men after my mother. Or my father if he knows where he is." Elijah took her hands in his. "We have the evidence, we have the truth, but most importantly, we have each other." Danielle looked into his eyes, seeing the same determination, the same courage that had drawn her to him all those years ago. "When this is over," she said softly, "when my father is safe and Richard is facing justice, what happens to us?" Elijah smiled, bringing her hands to his lips. "Whatever you want, Danielle. We've lost 12 years. I don't intend to waste another minute." As they drove to the Ward estate, Danielle thought about how much had changed in just 2 days. She'd gone from believing her father had abandoned them to learning he'd sacrificed everything to protect them. From thinking Elijah had betrayed her to discovering he'd spent years searching for her, and now they were driving into danger together, united by a love that had somehow survived 12 years of separation and lies. The iron gates of the Ward estate opened as they approached, as if Richard had been watching for them. The long driveway was lined with security guards, their presence more menacing than protective. "This doesn't look like a family dinner," Elijah said grimly. "It's not," Danielle replied, her hand instinctively touching the small of her back, where her service weapon was concealed beneath her dress. "It's an ambush." The mansion was ablaze with lights, every window glowing in the darkness. A butler met them at the door, his face impassive as he led them through the grand foyer to the formal dining room. Richard Ward sat at the head of a long mahogany table, a crystal glass of whiskey in his hand. But they weren't alone. 6 men, in dark suits, stood around the room, their bulging jackets suggesting they were armed, and at the far end of the table, looking older and thinner but unmistakable, sat James Monroe. "Dad," Danielle whispered, her heart leaping into her throat. James Monroe looked up, his weathered face breaking into a pained smile. "Danielle, my little girl." "How touching," Richard said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "The family reunion." "I promised. Please sit down, we have much to discuss." Elijah squeezed Danielle's hand reassuringly as they took seats at the table, Danielle as close to her father as possible. "Where's my father?" Elijah asked, looking around. "You said he would be here." Richard waved a dismissive hand. "Charles sends his regrets. His flight was delayed." He smiled coldly. "So it's just us. One big, happy, dysfunctional family." "What do you want, Richard?" James Monroe asked, his voice stronger than his frail appearance suggested. "What I've always wanted," Richard replied. "Peace, stability, the continuation of the Ward family legacy without interference from—" He paused, looking at Danielle and her father. "Outsiders." "You framed my father," Danielle said, her voice shaking with anger. "You threatened my mother. You tore Elijah and me apart. And now you talk about peace." "I did what was necessary for the family," Richard said, "just as I'm doing now. By holding my father hostage." Danielle's hand moved slowly toward her concealed weapon. Richard noticed the movement and laughed. "I wouldn't, Officer Monroe. My men are faster, and there are more of them." "Let my father go," Danielle said. "We have the evidence, Richard. All of it. The bank records, the recordings. If anything happens to any of us, it goes public." Richard's smile never wavered. "Evidence can disappear. People can disappear." He nodded to one of his men, who moved to stand behind James Monroe's chair. "Now here's what's going to happen. Elijah, you will sign these papers." He slid a folder across the table. "Transferring your company shares to me and resigning as CEO. Then you will both hand over all copies of this so-called evidence." "And if we refuse?" Elijah asked, not touching the folder. "Then James Monroe truly will disappear this time." Richard nodded to the man behind James, who placed a hand on his shoulder. "And it won't be a comfortable retirement in Seattle." James Monroe looked at his daughter, his eyes filled with regret. "Danielle, don't give him anything. I've lived my life. Don't sacrifice yours." Quiet, Richard snapped. You've caused enough trouble, James. Danielle looked at her father, really seeing him for the first time in 12 years. Despite his frail appearance, his eyes were strong, determined, the same eyes that had smiled at her when she was a child, that had looked at her with pride. When she graduated from the police academy. No deal, Danielle said, turning back to Richard. My father is right. We're not giving you anything. Richard's smile faded. You disappoint me. I thought you were smarter than this. He nodded to his men. Take them to the cellar, all of them. We'll see if a night without food or water changes their minds. As the men moved toward them, Danielle caught Elijah's eye. He gave an almost imperceptible nod. It was time for their plan. Danielle stood suddenly, pulling out her phone. Before your men touch us, you should know that I just sent a signal. In exactly 2 minutes, if I don't send another signal, everything we have goes to the FBI, the Atlanta Police Department, and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Richard laughed. You're bluffing, am I? Danielle held up her phone, showing a countdown timer. 1 minute, 45 seconds. Give me that phone. Richard lunged forward, but Elijah blocked him. It's too late, Uncle. It's an automated system. If Danielle doesn't enter a specific code every hour, everything gets released. Richard's face contorted with rage. You're lying! 1 minute, 30 seconds, Danielle said calmly. Make your choice, Richard. Let us all walk out of here, or watch your empire crumble. The room was silent except for the ticking of an ornate grandfather clock in the corner. Richard's men looked to him for direction, their hands hovering near their weapons. 1 minute, Danielle announced. Stop, Richard shouted. Fine, you win. This round. But this isn't over. It is over, Elijah said firmly. Here's what's going to happen. We're all leaving here. Danielle, her father, and me. You're going to call off your men and you're going to stay away from all of us. Or what? Richard sneered. Or everything goes public anyway, Danielle said. And you go to prison for fraud, extortion, kidnapping, and attempted murder. 30 seconds, Elijah reminded them. Richard looked from Danielle to Elijah to James, his face a mask of hatred. Get out, he finally spat. All of you, but this isn't finished. Yes, it is, James Monroe said, standing slowly. It's been finished for a long time, Richard. You just wouldn't accept it. As they made their way to the door, Richard called after them. Elijah, the family will never forgive this betrayal. You'll be cut off, disowned. Elijah stopped and turned. That's where you're wrong, Uncle. I spoke with my father last night. He knows everything. The family board meets tomorrow, with or without you. And I think you know which way they'll vote. Richard's face paled. You're lying. Charles would never turn against me. 20 years ago, maybe not. But he's seen what your greed and cruelty have done to the family. It ends now. As they stepped outside, Danielle kept her phone up, the timer still counting down. Only when they were in Elijah's car driving away from the estate did she turn it off. There was no automated system, was there? James asked from the back seat, a hint of pride in his voice. No, Danielle admitted. Just a regular timer app, but he bought it. You always were a quick thinker, James said, even as a little girl. Danielle looked at her father in the rearview mirror, emotions overwhelming her. Dad, I thought you were dead. I'm sorry, baby girl, I never wanted to hurt you or your mother, but as long as Richard was watching, I couldn't risk coming home. We have so much to talk about, Danielle said, tears streaming down her face. So many years to catch up on. We have time now, James said softly. Thanks to you and Elijah, we finally have time. As they drove through the Atlanta night, Danielle reached for Elijah's hand. He squeezed it gently, a promise in his touch. The past couldn't be erased. The 12 years they'd lost couldn't be recovered. But the future, their future, was finally in their own hands. Dawn was breaking over Atlanta as Elijah pulled his car into the driveway of Yvonne Monroe's house. The porch light was still on, and through the window they could see Yvonne pacing anxiously. When the front door flew open and Yvonne saw her husband for the first time in 12 years, she froze, one hand going to her mouth. James, she whispered, as if afraid he might disappear if she spoke too loudly. James Monroe stood uncertainly by the car, leaning slightly on Danielle for support. Hello, Vonnie, he said, using the nickname only he had ever called her. Yvonne flew down the porch steps and into his arms, sobbing. "You're alive! You're really alive!" Lisa Carter stood in the doorway, watching the reunion with tears in her eyes. When Danielle looked away, Lisa gave her a thumbs up. "Let's get inside," Elijah said quietly, scanning the street. "Richard may have let us go, but I don't trust him not to change his mind." Once they were all safely inside, with doors locked and curtains drawn, Yvonne couldn't stop touching her husband's face, as if confirming he was real. "Why didn't you tell me you were alive?" she asked, hurt mingling with joy in her voice. "I wanted to," James said, holding her hands. "But every time I thought it was safe, Richard would make some move that showed he was still watching. I couldn't risk him hurting you or Danielle. So you just let us think you were dead." "For 12 years? Not entirely," James said. "I sent money when I could. Anonymous cashier's checks." Yvonne's eyes widened. "The checks, every Christmas and on Danielle's birthday. That was you?" James nodded. "It wasn't much, but I wanted to help somehow. We thought they were from my brother." "In Chicago?" Yvonne said, shaking her head in wonder. Lisa cleared her throat. "I hate to break up this reunion, but we need a plan. Richard Ward isn't going to just let this go." "She's right," Elijah said. "My uncle is at his most dangerous when cornered." "We have the evidence," Danielle reminded them. "We should take it to the FBI, not the local police. If Richard has connections in the department—" "He does," James interrupted. "At least he did when I was still in Atlanta. The police chief, several detectives, they all owed him favors." "FBI it is then," Elijah agreed. "But we need to move quickly. The family board meeting is at noon. If my father is there, he'll support me. If not—" "What do you mean, if not?" Danielle asked. Elijah's face darkened. "My uncle claimed my father's flight was delayed, but I've tried calling him several times with no answer. I'm worried Richard might have done something to prevent him from attending the meeting." "You think he'd hurt his own brother?" Lisa asked, shocked. "Richard Ward would hurt anyone who stood in his way," James said grimly. "Even family." Danielle pulled out her phone. "I have a contact at the FBI, an agent I worked with on a case last year." She stepped into the kitchen to make the call. While she was gone, Yvonne made coffee and insisted James eat something. He looked thin and tired, the years in hiding having taken their toll. "How sick are you, really?" Yvonne asked quietly, watching her husband with worried eyes. James sighed. "The cancer diagnosis was real, but I've been in remission for 6 months now." "And you didn't think to let us know?" Anger flashed in Yvonne's eyes. "I was going to," James said. "That's why I gave you the safety deposit box key. I was planning to come home for good to face whatever Richard might do. But then I heard Elijah was back in town looking for Danielle, and I knew things were coming to a head." "So you just watched from the shadows while our daughter walked into danger?" "I was trying to protect her," James insisted. "I've been following her, watching over her." "That's not protection, James. That's control. The same thing Richard Ward did to his family." James looked stricken. "I never thought of it that way." "Well, start thinking of it that way," Yvonne said firmly. "Our daughter is a grown woman, a police officer. She doesn't need you hiding in the shadows. She needs you standing beside her." Before James could respond, Danielle returned from the kitchen. "Agent Prescott will meet us at the federal building downtown in an hour," she announced. "He said to bring everything we have." "I'll get the files," Elijah said, heading for his car where they'd secured the evidence. Lisa stood and stretched. "I should get going. My shift starts in 30 minutes. "Thank you for staying with my mother," Danielle said, hugging her partner. "Any time. Just be careful, Dee. These Ward people play dirty." After Lisa left, Danielle sat beside her father on the sofa. There were so many questions she wanted to ask, so many years to account for, but one question burned brighter than the others. "Why didn't you come back for us, Dad? Even after I was grown, after Richard's threats couldn't hurt me anymore." James looked down at his hands. "At first it was fear of what Richard might do, then it was shame. How could I face you after abandoning you? What kind of father does that?" "A father who was protecting his family," Danielle said softly. What I told myself, but your mother's right. I was controlling, not protecting. I thought I knew what was best for you both. James looked up, his eyes filled with regret. I missed so much, Danielle. Your high school graduation, your academy graduation, your first day as an officer. I'll never get those moments back. No, you won't, Danielle agreed. But we have now. We have tomorrow, if you want it. James reached for his daughter's hand. More than anything. Elijah returned with the evidence, and Danielle quickly packed it into her laptop bag. We should get going. Agent Prescott doesn't like to be kept waiting. I'm coming with you, James said, standing. Yvonne stood as well. So am I. Mom, it might not be safe. I've spent 12 years believing your father was dead, Yvonne interrupted. I'm not letting him out of my sight again. Danielle looked at Elijah, who shrugged. The more witnesses, the better, and safety in numbers. As they prepared to leave, Danielle's phone rang. The caller ID showed it was Captain Brooks, her supervisor. At the precinct, Monroe, she answered professionally. Danielle, where are you? Brooks sounded tense. I've got Richard Ward in my office making some pretty serious allegations against you. Danielle's blood ran cold. What kind of allegations, Captain? Harassment, trespassing, threatening behavior. He says you've been stalking his family, that you have some personal vendetta against them. That's not true, sir. I can explain everything. You'd better, and it had better be good. Ward is threatening to go to the commissioner, the mayor, even the governor. Get down here now. Sir, I'm on my way to a meeting with the FBI. This involves a major fraud case. I don't care if it involves the second coming, Monroe. Get your ass in here now or turn in your badge. The line went dead. Danielle lowered the phone, her mind racing. What is it? Elijah asked, seeing her expression. Richard is at my precinct, making accusations against me. My captain wants me there immediately. It's a trap, James said. Richard is trying to separate us, pick us off one by one, or delay us until after the board meeting, Elijah added. If we don't get this evidence to the FBI in time, if my father doesn't make it to the meeting, Richard could maintain control of the company. I have to go, Danielle said. If I don't, I could lose my job. Your job isn't worth your life, her father argued. It's more than a job, Dad. It's who I am. Danielle straightened her shoulders. Besides, I'm not going alone. Elijah will take you and Mom to the FBI. I'll deal with Richard and meet you there. No way, Elijah said firmly. We stick together. We don't have a choice. If we all go to the precinct, Richard wins. The meeting happens, your father isn't there, and Richard stays in power. If we all go to the FBI, I lose my job, and Richard can claim we're all just bitter, making false accusations. She's right, Yvonne said reluctantly. We need to split up. Then I'm going with Danielle, Elijah insisted. No, Danielle shook her head. The FBI needs to hear from you directly. You're the one with the most credibility against Richard. Elijah looked torn, clearly hating the idea of separating. I don't like this. Neither do I, Danielle admitted, but it's our best option. She handed him her laptop bag with the evidence. Get this to Agent Prescott. I'll handle Richard. After a moment's hesitation, Elijah nodded. Be careful. Richard is desperate, and desperate men are dangerous. I know. I'll keep my guard up. Danielle checked her service weapon, making sure it was secure in its holster. Call me as soon as you've talked to the FBI. As they walked out to the cars, Elijah pulled Danielle aside. This isn't how I imagined our reunion going, he said with a sad smile. Me neither, Danielle admitted, but we'll have time. After this is all over. Promise? Elijah's eyes searched hers. Promise. Danielle reached up and kissed him gently. Now go. Make sure my parents get to the FBI safely. As she watched Elijah drive away with her parents, Danielle couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Richard was making his move too openly, too sloppily. It wasn't like him, unless this was just a distraction from his real plan. The precinct was unusually quiet when Danielle arrived. The front desk sergeant Rivera looked up with surprise. Monroe, what are you doing here? I thought you called in sick. Captain Brooks called me in. Said Richard Ward is making accusations against me. Rivera frowned. Richard Ward? Haven't seen him. And the captain's been in court all morning. Danielle's stomach dropped. When did the captain leave for court? Around 7. Won't be back until this afternoon. The phone call had been a fake. Richard had lured her away from her family. I need to use your phone, Danielle said urgently, reaching for the desk phone. Before Rivera could respond, the front doors burst open, and two uniformed officers rushed, in supporting a third person between them. It took Danielle a moment to recognize Elijah's assistant, Marcus, his face bruised and bloodied. "Help!" Marcus gasped when he saw Danielle. "They took him." "Who?" Danielle rushed forward, helping the officers lower Marcus into a chair. "Who took who?" "Richard's men," Marcus wheezed. "They took Elijah, ambushed us outside his hotel. Said if you want to see him alive again, you have to bring the evidence to the Ward estate. Alone." Danielle's world tilted. She'd walked right into Richard's trap and now Elijah was paying the price. "When?" she demanded. "How long ago?" 20 minutes maybe, Marcus said, wincing as Rivera pressed a cloth to a cut on his forehead. "They were waiting for us. Professional guys, ex-military by the looks of them." "Did they say anything else? Any deadline?" "Noon. The same time as the board meeting." Marcus looked at her desperately. "You can't go alone, Officer Monroe. These men will kill you both." Danielle was already dialing her phone, calling her father. When he answered, she spoke quickly. "Dad, Richard has Elijah. His men ambushed him outside his hotel." "What?" "But he just dropped us off at the FBI building. He was going to park the car and join us. They must have been following him." "Dad, listen carefully. Get the evidence to Agent Prescott. Tell him everything. Then call Elijah's father, Charles Ward. The number is in Elijah's phone. Mom should have it." "What are you going to do?" Her father's voice was tight with worry. "What I have to." Danielle ended the call before her father could argue. She turned to Rivera. "I need backup off the books." Rivera, a 20-year veteran who had seen it all, nodded solemnly. "What's going on, Monroe?" "Richard Ward has kidnapped Elijah Ward and is threatening to kill him if I don't bring him some evidence." "The Richard Ward? Richest man in Atlanta, Richard Ward?" "The same. He framed my father for embezzlement years ago, and now he's trying to cover it up." Danielle looked at her watch. It was 10:30. "I have 90 minutes to get to the Ward estate with evidence we don't have because it's on its way to the FBI." Rivera whistled low. "That's some soap opera shit right there. Tell me about it. Can you help me or not?" "Official channels would take too long," Rivera said thoughtfully. "And if Ward has connections in the department..." He made a decision. "I know some guys, former SWAT, now private security. They owe me a favor." "How fast can they be ready?" 30 minutes tops. "But we need a plan, Monroe." "The Ward estate is like a fortress," Danielle thought quickly. "I need to get inside, make Richard think I'm playing along. Your guys can create a diversion. Give me time to find Elijah." "That's not much of a plan," Rivera said doubtfully. "It's all we've got." Danielle checked her weapon again. "Call your guys. I'll create a fake evidence package to buy us some time." As Rivera made his calls, Danielle quickly gathered blank papers and an old USB drive from her desk, putting them in an envelope. It wouldn't fool Richard for long, but she didn't need long. Just enough time to locate Elijah and get him out. Her phone rang. "Lisa." "Dee, where are you? I just heard Richard Ward is pressing charges against you." "It's a lie, Lisa. Richard has kidnapped Elijah. I'm going to the Ward estate to get him back." "What?" "No, Danielle, that's crazy. Wait for the FBI. There's no time. If I don't show up with the evidence by noon, Richard will kill him." Lisa was silent for a moment. "Where are you now?" "At the precinct. Rivera is arranging some off-the-books backup. I'm on my way. Don't leave without me." "Lisa, partner, remember, where you go, I go." Danielle closed her eyes, grateful. "Hurry." By the time Lisa arrived, Rivera had made contact with his former SWAT friends, 3 hard-looking men with military precision in their movements. "Monroe, this is Jackson, Torres, and Miller," Rivera introduced them. "They understand the situation." Jackson, a tall black man with a scar across his jaw, nodded to Danielle. "We've had run-ins with Ward security before. They're good, but we're better." "The plan is simple," Torres added. "We create a distraction at the main gate. You go in through the service entrance on the east side. It's less guarded. Find your man, get out. We'll cover your exit." "How will I find him in that massive house?" Danielle asked. "Richard Ward conducts all his business in the conservatory," Miller said. If he's holding your friend for leverage, that's where he'll be. You seem to know a lot about the Ward estate, Danielle observed. Miller smiled grimly. I used to work security there, until Richard decided I knew too much about his business practices. That explained the personal grudge. Danielle didn't care as long as it worked in their favor. Once we're inside, how do we communicate? Lisa asked. Jackson handed them each an earpiece. These are encrypted. They can't scan them. We're assuming. Ward's men will search you when you arrive, Torres said to Danielle. The earpiece is designed to look like a hearing aid. They probably won't question it. And if they do? Danielle asked. Tell them you lost partial hearing after a shooting. Incident on the job, Miller suggested. Most security guys are former military or police. They'll respect that. As they finalized the details, Danielle's phone rang again. It was her mother. Danielle, we met with the FBI. Agent Prescott is taking the evidence seriously. They're preparing warrants now. Good. What about Elijah's father? We reached him. He was detained at the airport in London. Apparently, Richard arranged for his passport to be flagged, but he's making calls trying to delay the board meeting. It won't work, Danielle said. Richard will force it through somehow. Your father wants to talk to you, Yvonne said, her voice worried. He's very upset about what you're planning. There's no time, Mom. Tell Dad I love him, and I'll see you both soon. Danielle, I have to go. Danielle ended the call, feeling guilty but determined. Lisa placed a hand on her shoulder. You sure about this? No, Danielle admitted. But I'm sure about Elijah. He came back to Atlanta for me to make things right. I can't abandon him now. Then let's go get your man, Lisa said with a grim smile. The Ward estate looked different in daylight, more imposing, more fortress-like. As they approached in an unmarked van, Danielle could see security guards patrolling the perimeter, more than there had been the night before. He's expecting us, Lisa murmured. Good, Jackson said from the driver's seat. Means he'll be focused on the main entrance. They parked a quarter-mile from the estate in the cover of trees. Jackson handed Danielle a small device. Panic button, he explained. Press it if things go south. We'll come in hot. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, Danielle said, tucking the device into her sock. Remember, conservatory, east side of the house, Miller reminded her. There's a staff door near the kitchen. Security is minimal there during lunch preparation. We'll create the distraction in exactly 30 minutes, Torres said, checking his watch. Be ready. Danielle took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. Let's do this. She and Lisa made their way through the woods bordering the estate, staying low, and out of sight of the security cameras. When they reached the high stone wall, Miller's intelligence proved accurate. There was a service gate guarded by only one man. They waited in silence until, right on schedule, a series of loud explosions sounded from the main entrance. Smoke, bombs and flashbangs, creating chaos without causing real damage. The guard at the service gate spoke urgently into his radio, then jogged toward the commotion, leaving his post. Now, Lisa whispered. They slipped through the gate and across the manicured lawn to the east side of the mansion. Kitchen staff were visible through the windows, preparing lunch, oblivious to the security situation at the front of the property. Danielle found the staff entrance Miller had described and tried the handle. Locked. Step back, Lisa said, pulling out a small kit from her pocket. Within seconds, she had the lock open. Where did you learn that? Danielle asked, impressed. Misspent youth, Lisa grinned. Before I became a respectable officer of the law. They slipped inside, finding themselves in a service corridor. The sounds of the kitchen, clattering pots, sizzling food, raised voices, provided cover for their movements. The conservatory should be this way, Danielle whispered, pointing down the hall. They moved quietly, avoiding the kitchen staff. As they approached the main part of the house, voices became audible. Angry, argumentative voices. The board members are demanding answers, Richard, a man was saying. They won't proceed without Charles. Charles is indisposed, Richard's voice replied smoothly. As chairman, I have the authority to proceed. This isn't legal and you know it, the first voice insisted. Legal is whatever I say it is, Jenkins. Now, are you with me, or do I need to remind you of certain indiscretions that could ruin your career? Danielle and Lisa exchanged glances. Richard was threatening a board member to force the meeting through. They continued down the corridor until they reached an ornate door that likely led to the conservatory. Danielle pressed her ear against it. "Where is my son?" a new voice demanded, older, authoritative, with the same cultured accent as Richard. Danielle's heart leaped. Charles Ward had made it to the meeting after all. "Elijah is handling some personal matters," Richard replied, his voice betraying a hint of surprise. "I didn't expect you to make it, Charles. Your flight was delayed, I heard." "How convenient that my passport was flagged for a security check that didn't exist," Charles said coldly. "Almost as convenient as Elijah suddenly disappearing when he was set to present evidence against you." "I have no idea what you're talking about," Richard said smoothly. "Don't insult my intelligence, Richard. Where is my son?" There was a tense silence, then the sound of a door opening. "Mr. Ward," a security guard's voice interrupted. "We have a situation at the front gate. Some kind of attack." "Handle it," Richard snapped. "Sir, our cameras also picked up 2 intruders entering through the service gate. We're searching the grounds now." Danielle and Lisa looked at each other in alarm. They'd been spotted. "Find them," Richard ordered, "and bring Elijah up from the cellar. It seems his police officer girlfriend has arrived with my evidence." The cellar. Elijah was in the cellar. Danielle motioned to Lisa, and they backed away from the door, looking for stairs leading down. At the end of the corridor, they found a heavy door with a keypad lock. "Can you open it?" Danielle whispered. Lisa examined the keypad. "Not quickly. We need the code." Just then they heard footsteps approaching. A guard coming to bring Elijah up from the cellar. "Hide!" Danielle hissed, pulling Lisa into an alcove. The guard walked past them, punching a code into the keypad. 1983. The door clicked open, and he disappeared down the stairs. 1983, Lisa memorized. The year Ward Enterprises was founded. "Predictable," Danielle muttered. "Now we wait." A few minutes later, the guard reappeared, pushing Elijah ahead of him. Elijah's hands were bound, and a bruise was forming on his cheekbone, but otherwise he looked unharmed. "Move," the guard ordered, shoving Elijah toward the conservatory. As they passed the alcove, Danielle made a split-second decision. She stepped out, her service weapon raised. "Police, hands in the air." The guard froze, then slowly reached for his own weapon. "I wouldn't," Lisa said, stepping out behind him, her gun also drawn. 2 against 1, bad odds. The guard assessed the situation, then wisely raised his hands. "Danielle," Elijah breathed, relief washing over his face. "You shouldn't be here, it's a trap." "I know," Danielle said, keeping her gun trained on the guard while Lisa quickly cuffed him. "But so is this for Richard." Lisa gagged the guard with his own tie and dragged him into the alcove. "We need to move. Fast." Danielle cut Elijah's bonds with a pocket knife. "Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" "I'm fine," Elijah assured her, rubbing his wrists. "But Richard is desperate. He knows his time is running out." "Your father is here," Danielle told him, "in the conservatory with the board. Richard was trying to force a vote without him." Hope flared in Elijah's eyes. "Then we need to get in. There. I have evidence Richard doesn't know about. Recordings of him threatening me, admitting what he did to your father." "You recorded him?" Danielle asked, surprised. "My watch," Elijah explained, tapping the expensive timepiece on his wrist. "It has a built-in recording device, activated by voice command." "Clever," Lisa commented. "But how do we get into the conservatory without starting a firefight?" Danielle thought quickly. "Through the front. We walk right in." "That's your plan?" Lisa asked incredulously. "Richard is expecting me to come with the evidence." "So I will." Danielle held up the envelope with the fake documents. "While you two slip in behind me and find positions to cover the room." "It's risky," Elijah said, frowning. "So is doing nothing," Danielle countered. "The FBI is on its way, but they won't get here in time to stop the board meeting. This is our one chance to expose Richard in front of the entire Ward family board." After a moment, Elijah nodded. "Okay, but be careful. Richard will know the evidence is fake the moment he looks at it. I just need to distract him long enough for you to play those recordings." Danielle touched her earpiece. "Jackson, come in. We read you, Monroe. What's your status?" "We've found the target. Moving." To Phase 2. Keep the perimeter guards busy for another 10 minutes. Copy that. Stay safe. Danielle turned to Lisa and Elijah. Let's finish this. Richard Ward was in the middle of addressing the board members when Danielle walked through the main doors of the conservatory, the fake evidence envelope in her hand. Gentlemen, as I was saying, Richard stopped mid-sentence, his eyes narrowing as he saw Danielle. Officer Monroe. How unexpected. The room was filled with men and one woman in expensive suits, seated around a long table. At the far end sat Charles Ward, a distinguished-looking older man with the same eyes as his son. Mr. Ward, Danielle said calmly, I believe you're expecting me. Richard's smile was cold. Indeed, though not through the front door. Where is your escort? I gave him the slip, Danielle said, holding up the envelope. I have what you want. Now where's Elijah? All in good time. Richard held out his hand. The evidence first. From the corner of her eye, Danielle saw Lisa slip into the room through a side door, positioning herself behind a large potted plant. Elijah was nowhere to be seen, but she trusted he was in position. Release Elijah first, Danielle insisted, keeping the board members' attention on her. Officer Monroe, is it? Charles Ward stood, his voice commanding. What evidence are you referring to, and where is my son? Before Danielle could answer, the conservatory's glass ceiling shattered as Elijah rappelled down on a security cable, landing gracefully beside his father. I'm right here, Elijah said, his eyes locked on his uncle's shocked face. Richard recovered quickly, his expression hardening. This is a private board meeting. Officer Monroe, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. I don't think so, Danielle said, stepping forward. Not when the board hears what you've done. These wild accusations, Richard began, but Charles Ward cut him off. Let her speak, Richard. I want to hear what she has to say. Richard's face flushed with anger. This is outrageous. She has no right. Actually, I do, Danielle said firmly. As an officer of the law investigating fraud, extortion, kidnapping, and attempted murder. The board members murmured among themselves, looking concerned. Lies, Richard spat. All lies. Are they? Elijah asked, tapping his watch. A recording began to play. Richard's voice, crystal clear in the hushed room. You think you can threaten me? I've buried better men than you, Elijah. Just like I buried James Monroe. Just like I'll bury his daughter if you don't back off. The board members looked shocked. Charles Ward's face darkened with anger. There's more, Elijah said, tapping his watch again. The embezzlement was child's play. Monroe was too trusting, too honest. It was almost too easy to frame him. Richard lunged for Elijah, but Danielle stepped between them, her service weapon drawn. Don't move, Mr. Ward. You're under arrest. You have no authority here, Richard shouted, looking wildly around the room. Security! No one came. Outside, they could hear the sounds of a struggle. Jackson and his team were keeping Richard's security force occupied. It's over, Uncle, Elijah said quietly. The FBI has the financial records, the forged signatures, everything. They're on their way here now. Richard's face contorted with rage. You ungrateful brat. After everything I did for this family, for you... You did nothing for me, Elijah interrupted. You destroyed the woman I loved, framed her father, threatened her family, all to protect your own greed. The board will never believe this nonsense, Richard said, though his voice had lost its confidence. I believe it, Charles Ward said firmly. I've suspected for years that something wasn't right about James Monroe's conviction. Now I know the truth. He turned to the other board members. I move for an immediate vote to remove Richard Ward from all positions within Ward Enterprises and to cooperate fully with the FBI investigation. I second the motion, said the lone woman on the board, her face grim. This is a coup, Richard snarled, backing toward a side door. You'll regret this, all of you. He made a sudden dash for the exit, pushing past a startled board member. Danielle moved to pursue him, but Elijah caught her arm. Let him go. The FBI will pick him up. Just as Richard reached the door, it burst open, and James Monroe stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 FBI agents. Hello, Richard, James said quietly. It's been a long time. Richard froze, staring at the man he had framed 12 years ago. You're dead, he whispered. Not quite, James replied, though you certainly tried your best. Agent Prescott stepped forward, badge in hand. Richard Ward, You're under arrest for fraud, extortion, conspiracy, and kidnapping. You have the right to remain silent." As the agents handcuffed a stunned Richard Ward, Danielle felt a weight lift from her shoulders. It was over. Finally. Over. She looked at Elijah, who was watching his uncle being led away. There was no triumph in his eyes, only relief and a touch of sadness for what his family had become. Charles Ward approached them, his face solemn. "Officer Monroe, I owe you and your family an apology. What my brother did was unforgivable." "It wasn't your fault, Mr. Ward," Danielle said. "Perhaps not directly, but I looked the other way for too long." Charles turned to his son. "And you, Elijah, I'm proud of you. It took courage to stand up to Richard, to right this wrong." Elijah smiled slightly. "I had a good reason." He took Danielle's hand, squeezing it gently. Lisa appeared beside them, holstering her weapon. "All clear. Ward's security team has been detained. Jackson and his guys are coordinating with the FBI outside." "Thank you," Danielle said. "I couldn't have done this without you. Partners, remember?" Lisa grinned. "Though next time, maybe just a routine traffic stop?" Danielle laughed, the sound of it surprising her. It felt like years since she'd had reason to laugh. James approached, looking uncertain. "Danielle, are you okay?" "I'm fine, Dad," she assured him. "Better than fine." She pulled her father into a hug, holding him tightly. Over his shoulder, she saw her mother enter the conservatory, escorted by an FBI agent. When Yvonne saw her husband and daughter embracing, tears filled her eyes. "Yvonne," James said, his voice breaking as he opened his arms to his wife. As her parents held each other, Danielle felt Elijah's arm slip around her waist. "So," he said softly, "what happens now?" Danielle looked up at him, at the face she had never forgotten, despite 12 years of separation. "Now we start over. No more secrets, no more lies, no more looking over our shoulders." "I'd like that," Elijah said, his eyes warm. "I've missed a lot of years with you, Danielle Monroe. I don't intend to miss any more." As the FBI agents began taking statements from the board members, as her parents clung to each other, making up for lost time, Danielle turned fully into Elijah's embrace. "How you came back for me," she whispered. "I never really left," he replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "My heart stayed with you, always." And there, in the shattered conservatory, with justice finally being served around them, Danielle kissed the man she had never stopped loving, the boy who had kissed her behind the church choir room, the man who had moved heaven and earth to find her again. Some loves, she realized, were worth waiting for, even 12 years. 3 months later, Atlanta was in the grip of autumn. The trees in Oakdale Park blazed with orange and red, their leaves drifting lazily to the ground in the gentle breeze. Danielle sat on a bench near the gazebo, watching children play on the swings. She wore civilian clothes, jeans and a light sweater, enjoying her day off. So much had changed since that fateful morning when she'd pulled over Elijah Ward for speeding. Richard Ward was awaiting trial, held without bail due to the severity of his crimes and his flight risk. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Financial, records, witness testimonies, and Elijah's recordings had sealed his fate. His expensive lawyers were fighting desperately, but even they couldn't deny the facts. Ward Enterprises had undergone a massive restructuring under Charles Ward's leadership, with Elijah taking a more prominent role in the company. They had also established a foundation to help victims of corporate fraud, with James Monroe as its first beneficiary, though he had refused any personal compensation. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Danielle looked up to see Elijah approaching, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He wore casual clothes, a stark contrast to the suit he'd been wearing when she first pulled him over. "Just thinking about how much has changed," she said, accepting the coffee he offered. Elijah sat beside her, his thigh touching hers. "Good changes, I hope." "Mostly." Danielle sipped her coffee. "Though I'm still not used to seeing my name in the newspapers." The case had made headlines across the country. Officer uncovers decade-old corporate fraud. Tech millionaire and police officer take down Atlanta's most powerful man. Love reunited after 12 years of separation. The story had captured the public's imagination, turning Danielle and Elijah into reluctant celebrities. The attention will die down eventually, Elijah assured her. People will find some new scandal to obsess over. I hope so. So I almost got written up for signing autographs while on duty last week. Elijah laughed, the sound warming Danielle's heart. Over the past 3 months, as they'd rebuilt their relationship, she'd come to treasure that laugh, a sign that the serious, guarded man was finding joy again. "How are your parents doing?" he asked. Danielle smiled. "Good. Dad's health is improving. The doctors say the cancer is still in remission. And Mom, well, she's making him eat vegetables and take long walks, so he complains a lot. But I can tell he loves every minute of it." James and Yvonne Monroe had decided to renew their vows, a small ceremony planned for the spring. After 12 years apart, they were making up for lost time, rediscovering each other with the eagerness of newlyweds and the depth of long-time partners. "And your father?" Danielle asked. "How's he handling the company changes?" "Better than I expected," Elijah admitted. "He feels guilty for not seeing through Richard's schemes earlier. The foundation was his idea, a way to make amends." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes watching the children play. A little girl in a red coat ran laughing across the grass, chased by a boy with a toy airplane. "Do you ever think about what our lives would have been like if Richard hadn't separated us?" Danielle asked suddenly. Elijah considered the question. "Sometimes. We probably would have run away together as we planned, gone to college somewhere far from Atlanta. Would we have made it, 2 teenagers on our own? I'd like to think so." Elijah took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "We were always stronger together." Danielle leaned her head on his shoulder. "Maybe it happened the way it was supposed to. You built your company. I became a police officer. We became the people we needed to be to finally bring Richard to justice." "That's a very philosophical way of looking at 12 years of heartache," Elijah said with a small smile. "I've had a lot of time to think about it," Danielle replied. "And I've realized something important." "What's that?" "The past is the past. We can't change it, can't get those years back." She turned to face him. "But we have now, we have tomorrow, and I don't want to waste another minute living in what might have been." Elijah's eyes softened. "Neither do I." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small worn piece of paper, carefully folded into the shape of a heart. Danielle recognized it immediately. It was the same way he used to fold notes to her in high school. "What's this?" she asked, though her heart was already racing. "Open it," Elijah said softly. Danielle carefully unfolded the paper. Inside, in Elijah's neat handwriting, were the words, "Will you marry me?" She looked up, tears filling her eyes, to find Elijah on one knee in front of her, a small velvet box in his hand. "Danielle Monroe," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "I lost you once and it nearly destroyed me. I won't lose you again. Will you marry me?" He opened the box, revealing a stunning but understated diamond ring, elegant and strong, just like her. "Yes," Danielle whispered, then louder. "Yes, Elijah. Yes." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, as he pulled her into his arms and kissed her, Danielle felt a sense of completion, of coming full circle. The gazebo where they stood was the same one where they'd first kissed as teenagers, where they'd made plans for a future together, where they'd reunited after 12 long years apart. Now it would be the place where they began their new journey, not as the teenagers they had been, but as the adults they had become. Stronger for the separation, wiser for the pain, and determined never to be parted again. No, absolutely not. "I look ridiculous." Danielle stood in her mother's living room wearing a flowing white wedding dress that Lisa had insisted she try on. The wedding was still 4 months away, but Lisa had appointed herself unofficial wedding planner and was attacking the task with military precision. "You do not look ridiculous," Lisa argued, adjusting the train. "You look like a princess." "I'm a police officer, not a princess," Danielle grumbled. Yvonne entered with a tray of tea, smiling at her daughter's discomfort. "You look beautiful, baby, but if you don't like it, there are plenty of other dresses to try." "I don't want a big fancy wedding," Danielle said, carefully sitting down in the voluminous gown. Something simple would be fine. Simple doesn't mean plain, Lisa countered. And after everything you and Elijah have been through, you deserve a magical day. Danielle sighed, knowing she was fighting a losing battle. Between Lisa's enthusiasm, her mother's quiet insistence on a proper wedding, and Elijah's willingness to give her anything she wanted, she was outnumbered. Fine, but I draw the line at a tiara. Lisa and Yvonne exchanged glances, and Danielle groaned. You already bought one, didn't you? It's very subtle, Yvonne defended. Just a few small diamonds. Diamonds, Mom, we can't afford. Elijah insisted, Yvonne interrupted. And before you get all independent and stubborn, remember that this is his wedding too. Let him spoil you a little. Danielle touched the engagement ring on her finger. It still felt strange, this symbol of commitment, of permanence. After years of keeping people at a distance, of building walls around her heart, she was learning to let someone in again. Speaking of Elijah, Lisa said, checking her watch. Isn't he picking you up soon? Something about dinner with his father? Yes, and I need to change out of this dress, Danielle said, grateful for the excuse to escape wedding planning. As she struggled out of the gown in her old bedroom, her phone rang. It was Captain Brooks. Monroe, she answered professionally. Despite being tangled in yards of tulle, Danielle, I know it's your day off, but we've got a situation. Richard Ward has requested to speak with you. Danielle froze. With me? Why? He says he has information about a threat to Elijah. He won't talk to anyone else. Say it's probably a trick, Danielle said, her mind racing. He's desperate, trying to manipulate us. Probably, Brooks agreed. But if there's even a small chance the threat is real, I'll be there in 30 minutes, Danielle said, her protective instincts kicking in. After hanging up, she quickly changed into jeans and a blouse, then went to break the news to her mother and Lisa. You're not going alone, Lisa said immediately. I'll be in a police station surrounded by officers, Danielle reminded her. Besides, Richard is in custody, in handcuffs. What can he do? It's not what he can do physically that worries me, Lisa said. It's what he can do to your head. He's manipulative, Danielle. I know that. But if there's any chance Elijah is in danger, at least call him, Yvonne suggested. Let him know what's happening. Danielle nodded, stepping outside to make the call. Elijah answered on the first ring. Hey, he said warmly. I was just about to leave to pick you up. There's been a change of plan, Danielle said. Richard has asked to speak with me. He says he has information about a threat against you. There was a long pause. Don't go, Elijah finally said, his voice tight. It's a trap, Danielle. He's trying to get to you because he knows that's the best way to hurt me. I know it might be, Danielle admitted. But what if it's not? What if there is a real threat? Then we'll handle it together. Please wait for me. I'll come with you. Danielle hesitated. Her instinct was to rush to the station to confront Richard, to protect Elijah from any possible threat. But Elijah's concern touched her. He wasn't trying to control her actions. He was worried for her safety, just as she was worried for his. Okay, she agreed. We'll go together. 30 minutes later, Elijah's car pulled up outside Yvonne's house. Danielle kissed her mother goodbye and promised Lisa she'd call with an update. In the car, Elijah reached for her hand. Thank you for waiting for me. Partnership goes both ways, Danielle said. I'm learning that. We both are. Elijah squeezed her hand. Whatever Richard has to say, we'll face it together. At the police station, Captain Brooks met them in the lobby. He's in interview room 3. His lawyer is with him and we have 2 officers in the room. Has he said anything else about this supposed threat? Danielle asked. Nothing specific, just that it involves people who worked for him, people who might target Elijah to keep him from testifying. Danielle and Elijah exchanged glances. Could be legitimate, Elijah admitted. My uncle had connections to some dangerous people. Only one way to find out, Danielle said. They followed Captain Brooks to the interview room. Through the one-way glass, they could see Richard Ward dressed in an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed to the table. He looked thinner than when they'd last seen him, his face gaunt, his eyes haunted. Beside him sat an expensive-looking lawyer in a tailored suit. You don't have to do this, Elijah said quietly. We can walk away, let the FBI handle it. No, Danielle said firmly. I want to hear what he has to say. She entered the room, Elijah close behind her. Richard looked up, a thin smile spreading across his face. Officer Monroe, and my dear nephew, how touching that you come as a pair now. You said you had information about a threat to Elijah, Danielle said, getting straight to the point. What is it? Richard leaned back as far as his handcuffs would allow. So impatient. No time for pleasantries. Mr. Ward, Captain Brooks warned from the doorway, this isn't a social call. Of course not. Richard's eyes shifted to Elijah. How's your father? Still playing the righteous businessman, cleaning up my mess? My father is fine, Elijah said coldly. The company is thriving without you. Is it? That's not what I heard. Richard smiled slyly. I heard the stock is down 15% since my arrest. The board is nervous, investors pulling out. The company will recover, Elijah said. Ward Enterprises is more than one man. True, but reputation is everything in business. Richard turned to Danielle. Speaking of reputation, how's your father enjoying his newfound status as an innocent man? Must be quite a change after being branded a thief for so long. My father is not the reason we're here, Danielle said, refusing to be baited. You mentioned a threat. What is it? Richard studied her for a moment, then sighed dramatically. Very well. There are people who worked for me, people who handled certain delicate matters. They're concerned that Elijah's testimony could implicate them. What people? Elijah demanded. People who don't appear on any payroll, who don't leave paper trails. Richard leaned forward. People who might decide that silencing you permanently is their best option. Danielle felt a chill run down her spine. Names, Richard, we need names. I could provide those for a price. You're in no position to negotiate, Captain Brooks said from the doorway. On the contrary, Captain, I'm in the perfect position. Richard smiled coldly. My lawyer has already spoken with the district attorney about a plea deal. The lawyer cleared his throat. My client is willing to provide information about numerous criminal enterprises in exchange for certain considerations. What kind of considerations? Danielle asked warily. A reduced sentence, minimum security facility, protection from the very people he'll be informing on. Elijah shook his head in disgust. Unbelievable. After everything you've done, you expect leniency? I expect a fair exchange, Richard countered. Information for comfort. Isn't that how the system works, officer? Monroe? Danielle's jaw tightened. Not for people like you. People like me? Richard laughed. You mean people who understand how the world really works, who know that everything and everyone has a price? Not everyone, Danielle said firmly. Really? Richard's eyes glittered. Then why are you here? Because I threatened your precious Elijah and you came running. Love is your price, Officer Monroe, and it's a steep one. Danielle felt Elijah tense beside her. This was a mistake, Elijah said, standing. He doesn't have any real information. He just wanted to see us to play his games. Richard's smile faded. Sit down, nephew. I'm not finished. Yes, you are, Elijah said coldly. You've lost, Uncle. Your money, your power, your freedom, all. You have left our words, and they have no power over us anymore. He turned to leave, but Richard's next word stopped him cold. Marcus Jenkins. Elijah slowly turned back. What about him? Your loyal assistant, the man who helped you find James Monroe, the man who was so conveniently beaten the day you were kidnapped. Richard's smile returned. Did you never wonder why my men knew exactly where to find you that day? Danielle looked at Elijah, whose face had gone pale. Marcus, that's impossible. He's been with me for years. 5 years, Richard agreed. Ever since I placed him in your company to keep an eye on you. Who do you think told me you were looking for James Monroe? Who do you think kept me informed of your every move? Elijah shook his head. You're lying. I asked him about the payments to his offshore account. Ask him about the meetings with my security chief every month for the past 5 years. If Marcus was working for you, why would he help Elijah find James Monroe? Danielle challenged. He didn't. He fed Elijah just enough information to think he was making progress while actually leading him in circles. Richard leaned back, clearly enjoying himself. Until Elijah got too close to the truth, then Marcus had to improvise. The ambush, Elijah said quietly. He set it up. Very good, nephew. Marcus called my men, told them exactly where you'd be. The beating he took was theatrical, just enough to be convincing without causing any real damage. Danielle watched Elijah's face, saw the doubt creeping in. Why are you telling us this now? She asked Richard. Because Marcus has outlived his usefulness, and because he's planning something. Richard's voice lowered. Something my contacts in Atlanta's less reputable circles have been whispering about. Something involving Elijah and a tragic accident. You expect us to believe you're warning us out of the goodness of your heart? Danielle asked skeptically. Not at all. I'm warning you because Elijah is still my nephew. Because despite everything, blood is thicker than water. Richard's eyes met Elijah's. And because I know what it's like to lose the person you love most in the world. For a moment, something almost human flickered in Richard's eyes, a glimpse of the man he might have been before greed and power corrupted him. Check Marcus's phone records, Richard continued. The calls to a burner phone every Tuesday. Check his bank accounts, the deposits that don't match his salary. Check his internet search history, the inquiries about untraceable poisons, about car brake failures. Elijah stood frozen, clearly shaken by the accusations against his most trusted employee. Why would Marcus want to hurt Elijah now? Danielle asked. You're already in jail, the damage is done. Because Elijah's testimony at my trial could expose Marcus's role in everything. And because there are other people involved. People who paid Marcus handsomely to be their inside man at Ward Enterprises. People who would be very unhappy if their connection to certain creative accounting practices came to light. Who are these people? Captain Brooks demanded. Richard smiled. That's part of my plea deal, Captain. Information for comfort, remember. Danielle looked at Elijah, who seemed lost in thought. Elijah? What do you think? Elijah finally met her eyes. It makes a terrible kind of sense. Marcus always seemed to know too much, to be too conveniently helpful, and he was strongly against my coming to Atlanta to find you. We need to investigate this, Danielle said to Captain Brooks. If Marcus is really planning something, I'll contact the FBI. Brooks nodded. They're already investigating Ward's criminal connections. We'll add Marcus Jenkins to their list. He'll know something's wrong the moment you start asking questions. Richard warned. He's smart, careful, he'll disappear. Then we won't ask questions, Danielle said, an idea forming. We'll set a trap. Richard raised an eyebrow. Now you're thinking like a Ward. No, Danielle said firmly. I'm thinking like a cop who wants to protect the people she loves. She turned to Elijah. We need to make Marcus think his plan is working. That you trust him completely. Elijah nodded slowly. I have a board meeting tomorrow. Marcus will be there taking notes as usual. I can mention that I'm planning to testify in detail about Richard's operations. Good, Danielle agreed. Meanwhile, we'll get warrants for his phone and bank records, if Richard is telling the truth. For once in my life, Richard interjected with mock offense. Then we'll find the evidence we need to arrest Marcus before he can make a move against you. As they left the interview room, Elijah was quiet, processing the betrayal of his trusted assistant. Are you okay? Danielle asked softly. I trusted him, Elijah said, his voice pained. For 5 years I confided in him, relied on him. He was more than an assistant, he was a friend, or so I thought. We don't know for sure that Richard is telling the truth, Danielle reminded him. No, but it fits. The way Marcus always seemed to anticipate my needs, the way he always had exactly the information I was looking for. Elijah ran a hand through his hair. I should have seen it. Richard is a master manipulator. So is anyone who works for him. Danielle took his hand. Don't. Blame yourself. Elijah squeezed her hand gratefully. What would I do without you? Let's make sure you never have to find out, Danielle said, determination hardening her voice. If Marcus is planning something, we'll stop him. Together. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind of activity. The FBI, armed with warrants, discovered exactly what Richard had described. Offshore accounts in Marcus's name, filled with payments that coincided with major decisions at Ward Enterprises. Phone records showed weekly calls to an untraceable number, and his internet history revealed disturbing searches about methods to cause accidental deaths. Most damning of all, Agents found a vial of clear liquid in Marcus's apartment that, testing, revealed to be a tasteless, odorless poison that mimicked the symptoms of a heart attack. "He was planning to poison you at the charity gala next week," Agent Prescott told Elijah during a briefing at the FBI office. "We found an invitation in his apartment with notes about final arrangements and untraceable exit strategy." Danielle, sitting beside Elijah, felt sick at how close they'd come to losing everything they'd fought so hard to reclaim. "Have you arrested him?" she asked. "Not yet," Prescott replied. "We're tracking his movements, waiting for him to lead us to his contacts. This goes beyond just Marcus Jenkins. We're looking at a network of corporate espionage and fraud that spans multiple companies." "So Elijah is still in danger," Danielle said, her protective instincts flaring. "We have agents watching him around the clock," Prescott assured her, "and now that we know what to look for, Marcus won't get anywhere near him with that poison." "What? About the gala?" Elijah asked. "It's a major fundraiser for the foundation. I can't just not show up." "You'll attend as planned," Prescott said, "but with enhanced security and a few undercover agents posing as guests. We want Marcus to think his plan is proceeding." "You're using Elijah as bait," Danielle said, not bothering to hide her displeasure. "It's the best way to catch Marcus and his associates in the act," Prescott explained. "But I assure you, Mr. Ward will be in no real danger." Danielle wasn't convinced, but she knew Elijah well enough to recognize the determination in his eyes. He wanted to end this, to cut the last ties to his uncle's corrupt empire. "I'll be there too," she said firmly, "as Elijah's date." "Of course," Prescott nodded. "We anticipated that. You'll be briefed on the security protocols before the event." As they left the FBI office, Elijah pulled Danielle into a quiet corner of the parking garage. "You don't have to do this," he said softly. "Attend the gala, put yourself at risk." "Yes, I do," Danielle replied. "For the same reason you do, because it's the right thing to do, because it's the only way to truly end this." Elijah cupped her, face in his hands. "Have I told you lately how much I love you?" "Not in the last hour," Danielle smiled. "I love you, Danielle Monroe, more than I thought it was possible to love someone." He kissed her then in the dim light of the parking garage, with all the passion and tenderness that had survived 12 years of separation, betrayal, and pain. When they broke apart, Danielle rested her forehead against his. "We're going to get through this," she promised. "And then we're going to have that simple wedding I want, and the lavish reception your father and my mother want, and the honeymoon somewhere far away from Atlanta that we both want." Elijah smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "I like the way you think, Officer Monroe." "Soon to be Officer Ward," Danielle corrected, still getting used to the idea of taking his name. "Officer Danielle Ward," Elijah tested the name. "It has a nice ring to it." "Speaking of rings," Danielle held up her hand where her engagement ring caught the light. "I think I'm starting to get used to this." "Good," Elijah said, kissing her again, "because I intend to keep you wearing it for a very long time." The night of the charity gala arrived, clear and cool. The event was being held at the Atlanta Botanical. The gardens transformed for the evening into a glittering wonderland of lights and flowers. Danielle stood in her bedroom, studying her reflection in the mirror. The midnight blue gown Lisa had helped her choose was elegant but practical, allowing her to move freely if necessary. Her service weapon was secured in a thigh holster, hidden by the flowing skirt. Her mother knocked softly on the door. "Elijah's here, baby, and he looks about as nervous as you do." Danielle smiled. "I'm not nervous about seeing Elijah. I'm nervous about letting Marcus get anywhere near him." "The FBI knows what they're doing," Yvonne reassured her. "And so do you. You've been preparing for this your whole career." "I know." Danielle took a deep breath. "How do I look?" "Beautiful," Yvonne said, her eyes filling with tears. "Your father is going to cry when he sees you." James was waiting in the living room with Elijah, both men handsome in their tuxedos. When Danielle entered, her father did indeed tear up, while Elijah simply stared, momentarily speechless. "You look," Elijah finally managed, "incredible." "You clean up pretty well yourself," Danielle smiled, adjusting his bow tie. "Ready for this?" As ready as I'll ever be, Elijah replied, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Agent Prescott confirmed that Marcus is already at the venue, overseeing the final arrangements. Then let's not keep him waiting, Danielle said, her tone light despite the tension she felt. James stepped forward, hugging his daughter carefully to avoid wrinkling her dress. Be safe, he whispered. Always, she promised. Yvonne hugged her next. We'll be right here waiting for you to call with good news. In the limousine on the way to the gardens, Danielle briefed Elijah one final time on the security plan. Agent Prescott and his team will be positioned throughout the venue. I'll be with you constantly, except for a brief period when you're scheduled to speak. During that time, 2 agents posing as security guards will be within arm's reach. And Marcus, he'll be monitored at all times. If he makes any move toward you with the poison, they'll intercept him. Elijah nodded, then reached for her hand. Whatever happens tonight, I want you to know something. What's that? These past 3 months with you have been the happiest of my life. Whatever time we lost, whatever pain we endured, it was worth it to be here now with you. Danielle's throat tightened with emotion. Elijah Ward, are you trying to make me cry and ruin my makeup before we even arrive? He laughed softly. Never. I know better than to cross a woman with a gun strapped to her thigh. The limousine pulled up to the entrance of the botanical gardens, where a red carpet had been laid out for the arriving guests. Photographers lined the way, capturing the city's elite as they entered the charity gala. Elijah helped Danielle from the car, and flashbulbs immediately began popping. Their story had captured the public's imagination, and their appearance together still drew attention. Mr. Ward, Officer Monroe. Over here, reporters called. Elijah smiled for the cameras, his arm around Danielle's waist, the picture of a successful businessman and his beautiful fiancée. Only Danielle could feel the tension in his body, the slight stiffness in his smile. As they made their way inside, Danielle scanned the crowd, quickly identifying the undercover FBI agents positioned strategically throughout the space. The gardens had been transformed into a fairy tale setting, with thousands of tiny lights woven through the trees and flowers, creating a magical atmosphere. Elijah! Charles Ward approached, champagne glass in hand. He kissed Danielle's cheek, warmly before shaking his son's hand. Danielle, you look stunning. Thank you, Mr. Ward, Danielle smiled. Charles, please. We're going to be family soon. His eyes twinkled. And speaking of family, have you two set a date yet? June 15th, Elijah answered. Small ceremony, close friends, and family only. So your mother keeps telling me, Charles laughed. Though, I think her definition of small and yours might differ slightly. As they chatted, Danielle noticed Marcus approaching from across the room. He looked impeccable as always, clipboard in hand, the perfect executive assistant. Elijah, she said quietly, a warning in her tone. Elijah followed her gaze and nodded almost imperceptibly. Marcus, everything on schedule? Of course, sir, Marcus smiled, revealing nothing of his true intentions. The program begins in 15 minutes. You're speaking third after the mayor and the foundation chairman. Perfect. Elijah turned to his father. Dad, could you keep Danielle company for a minute? I need to review my speech with Marcus. Charles understood immediately. Of course, Danielle, have you seen the orchid display? It's quite extraordinary. As Charles led her away, Danielle glanced back to see Elijah and Marcus heading toward a quieter corner of the room. Agent Prescott, disguised as a waiter, moved subtly to follow them. He'll be fine, Charles reassured her, noticing her concern. The FBI has this place locked down tight. I know, Danielle said, forcing herself to relax. It's just hard to let him out of my sight when I know what Marcus is planning. My son is fortunate to have found someone who cares for him so deeply, Charles said, his voice warm. After Richard's betrayal, Elijah built walls around himself. You're the only one who's managed to break through them. Danielle smiled, touched by his words. He broke through mine too. The next 15 minutes passed slowly. Danielle mingled with guests, keeping Marcus in her peripheral vision as he moved around the room. He seemed calm, professional, nothing in his demeanor suggested he was planning to poison his employer that night. Finally, the program began. The mayor spoke briefly, followed by the foundation chairman. Then it was Elijah's turn. As he took the stage, the crowd applauded enthusiastically. Elijah Ward was a respected figure in Atlanta business circles, and his foundation's work with victims of corporate fraud had earned him additional goodwill. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Elijah began, his voice strong and clear. The James Monroe Foundation was established with a simple mission: to help those who have been victimized by corporate greed and corruption. From her position near the stage, Danielle watched Marcus, who stood to the side, a glass of water in his hand. Water intended for Elijah after his speech. Agent Prescott positioned himself closer, pretending to adjust a flower arrangement. "My own family's company was once part of the problem," Elijah continued. "My uncle, Richard Ward, used his power and influence to destroy lives, including that of James Monroe, the man for whom this foundation is named." The crowd was silent, captivated by Elijah's candor. Danielle noticed Marcus checking his watch, his knuckles white around the glass he held. But tonight isn't about the past. It's about the future, about making amends and creating a world where corporate responsibility isn't just a buzzword, but a reality. As Elijah spoke, Marcus began moving toward the stage, the water glass still in his hand. Danielle tensed, her hand instinctively moving toward her concealed weapon. "In the coming weeks I will be testifying in my uncle's trial," Elijah said, his eyes finding Danielle's in the crowd. "I will tell the truth about everything. I witnessed everything I was part of, however unwittingly. It's time for full transparency, no matter how painful." Marcus was now at the steps leading to the stage, waiting for Elijah to finish. Agent Prescott moved in closer, another agent approaching from the opposite side. "Thank you again for your support. Together we can make a difference." As the crowd applauded, Elijah stepped down from the podium. Marcus moved forward, offering the water glass with a practiced smile. "Excellent speech, sir. You must be thirsty." Elijah reached for the glass, but before he could take it, Agent Prescott bumped into Marcus, causing him to stumble. The water splashed onto Marcus's suit. "I'm so sorry, sir." Prescott apologized loudly, maintaining his waiter disguise. "It's fine," Marcus said tightly, his eyes darting around nervously. "Just get me a towel." As Prescott moved away, seemingly to fetch a towel, the second agent approached Marcus from behind. "Sir, could you come with me for a moment? There's an issue with the catering that requires your attention." "Not now," Marcus snapped, clearly agitated. "I need to get Mr. Ward another glass of water." "I insist," the agent said, showing his badge. Discreetly, Marcus's face paled. For a moment, Danielle thought he might run, but with agents on either side of him, he had nowhere to go. "Marcus Jenkins," Prescott said quietly, returning without a towel. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, corporate espionage, and fraud." As the agents led a stunned Marcus away, carefully avoiding drawing attention from the other guests, Elijah made his way to Danielle's side. "It's over," he said softly, taking her hand. "Not quite," Danielle replied, nodding toward the entrance, where two more agents were apprehending a man she recognized as one of Ward Enterprises' board members. "Looks like they're rounding up all of Marcus's associates." Elijah watched as several well-dressed men and women were discreetly escorted from the gala. "I knew Richard's corruption ran deep, but it ends tonight," Danielle assured him. "All of it." Charles Ward joined them, his face grim. "The FBI just told me they've arrested Jenkins and 5 board members. Apparently, they were all part of Richard's inner circle." "I'm sorry, Dad," Elijah said, placing a hand on his father's shoulder. "Don't be, this is necessary. Ward Enterprises needs a clean slate." Charles managed a small smile. "Now, why don't you two enjoy the rest of the evening? Dance with your beautiful fiancée, son. I'll handle the press and the concerned guests." As Charles moved away to calm the whispers that were starting to spread through the crowd, Elijah led Danielle to the dance floor. "May I have this dance, Officer Monroe?" he asked, a hint of his old smile returning. "I'd be honored, Mr. Ward," she replied, stepping into his arms. As they swayed to the soft music, surrounded by flowers and twinkling lights, Danielle felt the tension of the evening melt away. Marcus was in custody, his plot foiled. Richard's criminal network was being dismantled. For the first time since they'd reunited, there were no shadows hanging over them, no threats lurking in the background. "What are you thinking?" Elijah asked, his cheek against her hair. "That I'm looking forward to a very boring life with you," Danielle smiled. "No more conspiracies, no more dangers, no more long-lost relatives coming back from the dead." Elijah laughed softly. "Boring sounds perfect. Though with you, Danielle Monroe, I doubt life will ever be truly boring." "Is that a complaint?" she teased. "Never." He pulled back slightly to look into her eyes. "It's one of the many, many reasons I love you." As he bent to kiss her, as the music swelled around them, Danielle knew that whatever came next, wedding plans, honeymoon decisions, the everyday challenges of merging two independent lives, they would face it together. The girl who had lost, her father who had built walls around her heart, who had pulled over a speeding car on a humid Atlanta morning, had found not just love, but healing. The scared boy who had been torn from his first love, who had spent 12 years searching for her, had found not just the woman he loved, but redemption. Their story, which had begun with pain and separation, was continuing with joy and togetherness, and this time, no one would pull them apart. 1 year later, the summer sun shone brightly on the small church where 13 years earlier, Elijah and Danielle had shared their first kiss behind the choir room. Today it was decorated with simple white flowers and greenery filled with their closest friends and family. Danielle stood in the small dressing room, her father beside her. Her wedding dress was elegant but understated, no princess gowns or tiaras despite Lisa's protests. "Ready, baby girl?" James asked, his eyes misty with emotion. "More than ready," Danielle smiled, adjusting her father's tie. "How's Elijah holding?" "Hup, nervous as a cat," James chuckled. "Charles is trying to calm him down, but I think only seeing you will do that." The music began, signaling it was time. Danielle took her father's arm, her heart full. "Dad, I'm glad you're here for all of it." James kissed her forehead gently. "I wouldn't miss it for the world, Danielle, not for anything." They walked down the aisle together, past the smiling faces of those who had supported them through everything. Lisa, beaming proudly as maid of honor, Captain Brooks and his wife, Agent Prescott, who had become a friend, Charles Ward standing tall beside his son. And at the altar, Elijah waited, his eyes never leaving Danielle as she approached. The boy who had kissed her behind the choir room had become a man who had moved heaven and earth to find her again. The love in his eyes was unmistakable, unwavering. When James placed Danielle's hand in Elijah's, when they spoke their vows before friends and family, they were promising more than just a future together. They were healing the past, making peace with the 12 years they had lost, and embracing the lifetime they would share. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister said, his voice warm. "You may kiss the bride." As Elijah pulled her close, as their lips met in a kiss that sealed their vows, Danielle knew that sometimes the longest journeys led exactly where you were meant to be all along. And as they walked back down the aisle together, hand in hand, husband and wife, she couldn't help but smile at the thought that had started it all. A speeding ticket on a humid Atlanta morning. The one she pulled over had become the one she would love for the rest of her life. And that was a happy ending. Worth waiting for, the end,